Evening, everyone. It being of the hour, I'd like to call the first official meeting of the first officially scheduled, not non-special meeting of the Freetown-Lakeville Regional School Committee to order for September 11th, 2013.
Roll. Robert Noguera.
Here.
David Brown.
Here.
Robert Clark. David Davenport. Carolyn Gomes. Here. David Goodfellow.
Will be absent.
Brett Kulikovich.
Here.
Michael McHugh.
Is anyone recording the meeting other than Lakeville CAM? Okay, please join me in saluting the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to, if everybody would remain standing and pause for a moment of silence to remember those who so bravely gave their lives on September 11th and all those who have since given their lives in war on terrorism. Thank you. Okay, portion of the agenda where we invite the community to come up and speak on items that are on the agenda to the school committee. I just ask you to come up to the podium and state your name.
Money, President of the Educators Association of Freetown-Lakeville. On behalf of the educators in this district, I would like to thank the school committee as well as Dr. Nash and the administrators for an exceptional opening day for teachers and staff. The service awards for our longtime employees were very well received and very much appreciated. And we felt that the entire tone of the meeting, from Dr. Nash's speech to Mr. Noguera's speech, really celebrated the fact that we have an excellent staff in this district, and despite all of the changes that we've gone through, this ship is still afloat and is sailing on course. So on behalf of the educators, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Dr. Nash.
Yes, good
I
evening.
will now, wait, first, sorry. We have acceptance of minutes
Okay.
for February 13th, 2013.
I'll make a motion to approve those minutes of February 13th, 2013.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, motion carries. And then we have minutes from June 5th, 2013 to approve.
Move to accept.
Okay,
Second.
have a motion and a second. Do I have any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Now on to you, Dr. Nash.
Quick question, please. Just a very quick one. Do we still have any minutes to catch up on, or what are we with minutes general? Just a point
We
of
have,
information.
I believe, 4 sets outstanding right now.
Okay. Just wanted to get a sense of it, just the dates, all the.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. Under new business, one of the things that I'd asked principals to do was this is the first official school committee meeting after the start of the school year. I asked that the principals come this evening to give you what I call their opening of school reports. So you'll hear some similar information from building principals. You have in your packets the handout or online for the class sizes as of yesterday or Monday. Can't remember what day it was that we said Monday. So you should have pretty up-to-date class sizes. They certainly will address them. But also, opportunity for you to meet some of our many new hires in this district. And I think you also have that in your packet. And so I'll point out that this year the high school won the award for new hires. I think Dr. Starkey spent most of the summer introducing and hiring her staff, and she'll introduce some of them who are here this evening. And I'd like to begin with Paul LaBelle. who will talk about opening day at AES. Before he does, I do want to say that I had great opportunity on opening day to be with Officer Maltese and follow the buses, if you will. So we started at the high school, we were at Grace, we were at the middle school, and I have been at AES, could not do FES because they start the same time, with Ryan Maltese and/or Ken Resendez from Durham Bus, and I think we're off to a good start. I don't think there were a few little things that needed to be ironed out. I think we had one bus breakdown right here, but overall, for opening day, we were off to a good start with the buses and with our transportation. So, Paul,
Excellent.
you might want to be at the microphone so people can hear.
I'm a rookie, so I'm...
So you'll be introducing yourself as a new hire?
I'll be, yes. Thank you. We had a wonderful opening to our first day of school, and we were so pleased to welcome some of our new hires. It's already the second week, and it feels like they've been with us forever. I do have one of our new hires here this evening. I have Jennifer Cooper, who is our reading specialist. We stole her from Rhode Island and Pennsylvania before that, so we're so pleased to have her with us. Our first day of school was, I guess, typical for first days of school. We have kids coming in off the buses. They're all dressed up in their new clothes and their new lunch boxes, and everything went pretty much as planned. We did have Dr. Nash and Mr. Resendez from the bus company coming and observing the kind of the unique dynamics of how we unload buses there, since we have one way in and one way out of the school. So they had some firsthand experience of that. All went well. Buses at the end of the day ran a little bit slow, which is to be expected. I thought it was enough time to put a one-call in place and just let the parents know that we were running a little bit late, and kind of expect that for the rest of the week, since we were going to be introducing kindergarten to the mix on Friday. So that seemed to do well. We just got a few clarifying calls from that. Other than that, everything was fine. Our total enrollment as of Monday is 487. Our kindergarten total is 96 with a class average of 19. Our grade 1 total is 120. 5 classrooms with a average of 24 in a class. Our grade 2, 148 students divided among 6 classes with 25 students as a class average. And finally, grade 3, 123 students divided amongst 5 classes with an average of 25. Facility changes at our school. We had a couple of projects going on. One was well underway when I came in on July 1st, which was the lighting project. That was headed up by Jim Porter, who I do want to say publicly did a fantastic job. At my end, he kept me informed of the whole project throughout the process. They replaced bulbs and ballasts, improving the light in the room, the lighting in the room, as well as the efficiency. I do want to emphasize he was asking me, how do you want the lights to turn on and off? Which lights do you want on and off? And we set up 3 classrooms. I had an entry meeting with our kindergarten teachers, and they came in and I let them choose which was the best setup. And it was a unanimous decision, and everyone appreciated Jim being able to give us a choice in that matter. There was also gym lamps that were also replaced. They were replaced with safety shields as well as safety cages. There was a small job of repainting the principal's office, which formerly had a puffy red valance and floral border. That was replaced. But we were also changing the logistics of that particular room. I'm kind of joking, but the room has a dividing wall, which was never really used, and I was trying to create more access for meetings within the building. So that wall is actually closed now, so that there's my office, and when the conference room needs to be used by others, it can be. We also had an empty room due to the amount of meetings. The present conference room was in with the guidance counselor. We took that out of her office. We also took the special education secretary out and gave her her own space. So everyone's got their own space. The meetings can happen without extraneous noise. The room that we moved them into also had a dividing wall, which we closed. We created a data room for our educational support team to use when they are reviewing and analyzing all the universal data that we are collecting. And lastly, was a big project that Dr. Nash and I felt was really necessary. We had our 2 courtyards in our building that were really overgrown with plant life. And we had landscapers that came in and brought down the foliage to a manageable means. And then we also have a plan that we're going to create barriers so that we can keep control of future growth. It's really a really pleasant place to go. We did a small little staff luncheon out there on the first day of school, and it's now a really nice place for teachers to bring their students out. So that was the capital facility changes. New programs, just the only thing to add is we have the new lunch and recess monitors that have been added to our staff. It was a slow hiring process, but our second lunch monitor will be on staff tomorrow. So that will help alleviate the coverage issue. And upcoming events, we have open house on the 25th, 6:30 to 8. We'll have a staggered entrance as they usually have. I'm creating in our cafeteria a little community networking activity that will go on. We have the Lakeville Public Library coming. It's going to do a membership drive with families, encouraging students to get library cards. We will have Suzanne Coyle, literacy coach, who will have information out on our reading and writing programs, and we'll be providing information for parents who want to promote more literacy at home. I'm also supporting the PTO in their fall dinner dessert fundraiser. I'm encouraging them to have a representative from the company. They're going to have soup and cookie samples as a little incentive for parents to increase the sales of their fundraiser. And that's it at AES.
Thank you.
FES has the benefit of having an interim principal, Mr. Fred Morris, whom I believe you have met or have heard me speak of or introduce, and also Kim Sofrino, who will be officially starting the 16th, is also here this evening, and I will be talking about her in a minute and introducing her officially with some background information. As I indicated to the committee, Fred will be staying on through the month of September, so that when Kim starts off, she'll have a 2-week period really to begin her entry plan. And I know that I read her email to staff this afternoon, setting up those individual meetings with staff and certainly with parents and community to really get a sense of the culture and the staff's needs, and as we move forward to begin to build her vision for that school. So I'll introduce, I don't know who's going to be speaking. I'll introduce Mr. Morris, our interim FES principal. Mr. Morris.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. First of all, if Mr. LaBelle is considering himself the rookie, then he has more seniority than I do, so we're all set. I really don't have as much planned. If he was the full course meal, we're just the celery on the side of the plate tonight with information we'd like to have. We did have several folks that joined us at Freetown Elementary School, including 2 principals, most of whom were, I think none of whom would be here with us tonight, but folks who have indicated to me that they have made changes from one school to another or one system or returned to us, and they're off to a great start with us back at Freetown Elementary School, or into Freetown Elementary School. We do have a new lunch recess monitor, and like Mr. LaBelle, we're anxiously awaiting the arrival of our second monitor. And as you heard, Ms. Kim Sofrino is going to be joining us in the very near future. With her arrival, will shortly after that be my departure. But I would like to talk for a minute or two, if I could, about the opening of school. I've opened several schools in the past, And it was a great opening. The building and the grounds were ready. In every building I've ever been in a school system, it's that week before school that you come in, and when you're walking into the school for the very first time, it's even more shocking. Then you look at it and you wonder, what have they been doing all summer? And that's in a critical way. And then for some way, that day before school starts, or that Friday before the long weekend, the place magically is all ready, with shiny floors you could eat off of, with grounds that have no grass between the cement blocks, with trees that are trimmed. It was amazing. And although obviously everything that goes on inside the building is extremely important, the way that place looks, the way these places look when people come in to the school to visit, when the children first arrive, sets the right tone. Speaking of tone, our building operation is up and running primarily because we had a clerical staff, probably of one, and I think about it now, over the summertime that, with the assistance of central office staff, that kept everything going, waiting for the arrival of people they didn't know, myself and Mrs. Sofrino. They didn't even know that they would ever know us at that particular point. And everything was ready. I'm glad to say that they were happy to have us with them and not ready to run the schools themselves, for sure. Staff is enthusiastic and prepared. I've been delighted with everyone that I've met. I too, similar to what Mrs. Sofrino's plan is, had opportunity to meet with grade level staff prior to school's beginning and since the school year has started. Not just over incidental daily operations, but around what some of their thoughts and goals would be, and I'm developing a nice list for the incoming principal as well. And most importantly, if I could say it this way, the children have been extremely welcoming to me and to every other adult in the school. I have not found a child yet who knows how to misbehave, and that's good. I'm not trying to teach them how to do that, but it's been a very, very terrific start. We thank you for that, and we thank them. I do have enrollment numbers. Hopefully they're the same as what superintendent's office has received, but we have updated them. We have an enrollment of pre-K to grade 3 students of 426 students. In pre-kindergarten classes, we have 73 students with a range of class size from 6 to 14. There's some obvious reasons why some classes are the sizes they are, with an average class size of 10 students. I don't want to get into points because it sounds like we're talking about parts of people, and so I won't do that. Kindergarten, we have 81 students ranging with classes ranging from 17 to 23, and an average class size of approximately 20 students. In first grade, we have 78 students with 19 to 20 students, class average as well as our class range. And we have 90 students in grade 2 with 22 to 23 students, and that is our average as well. 104 students in grade 3 with classes ranging from 20 to 21 with a class average of the same. We do have an upcoming open house on September 20th, it's Monday, at 6:30 to 8 o'clock. We intend to have that as a traditional open house where children will have a chance to show themselves off and their teachers off to their parents. And we're looking forward to that, and everyone here is certainly invited, not that I have to say that. And we thank you for giving us the opportunity to say hello, and I want everyone to know that I've thoroughly enjoyed my time, and I'm not leaving now, but it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi. The opening day, Grace, went very smooth. I do want to start just by really thanking again Bob Souza and the custodians. Grace is unique in that it has the summer program housed there. So it gives them 3 days to get the entire building ready for the new open house of the incoming 4th graders. And it was a fantastic job, so a shout out to them and the high school students that were able to get the building ready. Buses were fantastic, very smooth. I did not cost the bus company $1,200 like I did last year in overtime. Last year, all 4th and 5th graders were brand new to the building, never done buses before, and it was chaos. So we had a plan in place this year. Went very well. Kenny Resendiz was there the whole time. Didn't cause any late buses, so that went really smooth. There was a survey last year for parents, and I surveyed the staff this summer about strengths and weaknesses, and one of the weaknesses that was a common thread throughout was the behavioral expectations of students at Grace. So first day also we started with students letting them know our behavioral expectations. We had posters made of the Austin Pride core values that are now around the building everywhere. And every teacher also right outside their classroom and in their classroom has the behavior expectations for students. So hopefully this year, that there'll be some improvement in that as well. The enrollment I have and the total amount of students, 466. Grade 4 has 218, as you know, with an average class size of 27. Grade 5 has 248 students with an average class size of 25. There are no particular new staff to announce, but there were some changes that I'll just go over. Diane Hewling, came to Grace from Freetown Elementary School to be our reading specialist. Susan Matheson was hired as our full-time literacy coach this year. She was our half-time reading specialist last year. Megan Blell came to us from the middle school for music. And we have Nancy Kelly, Dean Sod, and Wendy Carrero that are paraprofessionals that also came from different buildings in the district. We have a new co-teaching model and a sub-separate program for students with significant disabilities as well as behavioral issues that was created this year. So Nicole Pereira, who is a 4th grade inclusion classroom teacher, is now co-teaching in that sub-separate model. So that is a change that has been added this year as well. As far as the building, there was a small amount of mold that was found in the music room that Fred Baker and Bob Souza addressed immediately. It's all been cleared out, everything's all set, so music classes will be able to begin in the music room starting on Monday. We also have an upcoming open house on September 18th from 6 to 7:30. And we spent our staff meeting today planning for that. Another thing in the survey was the inconsistency among classroom teachers and the amount of information they were providing at open house. So it'll now be consistent across the building as far as what information we are giving parents at open house, so they'll all have the same information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'd like to go along with all my other principals and say it was an excellent start at the middle school this year. It is an absolute pleasure to be back. As I told the whole staff on opening day that it feels like an old suit that I never wear, but it's very, very comfortable to be back at the middle school. This evening I'd like to introduce a couple of brand new staff members that we're very happy to join the middle school team. One is Vanessa Harvey, who's going to teach Spanish at the middle school.
Hola.
Ms. Harvey joins us from Norwood High School. We even had a little tug of war at the high school in order to get her, and we're very happy we won. But I want to point out something already. Vanessa has already saved the district thousands of dollars. By her coming to the middle school, it gave us the opportunity to offer Spanish to twice as many students right off the bat. However, textbook-wise, we didn't have enough textbooks to support providing Spanish to twice as many middle school students. Vanessa, with contacts at Taunton High School, was able to finagle them donating over 300 Spanish books of the same text to our school that they were going to put for surplus. So just alone, we've already earned our money with Vanessa, and I want to compliment her and thank her so much for that. The other new teacher we also hired this year, her name is Dorothy Andres. She's a 7th grade ELA teacher on the 7100 team. She joins us from the great state of Texas, and we're really glad she's able to join us, and we think she's going to be a wonderful addition to our school. Again, opening day went very, very smoothly. Currently, our total enrollment is 790 students. 6th grade is made up of 259, 7th grade 259, and 8th grade is 274. Our average class sizes for ELA, math, science, and social studies is anywhere between 22 and 30 students per class. Spanish is a little bit higher, and that's because we're really trying to get every student to take Spanish. But we feel really comfortable with our class sizes, especially in the core subject areas. We want to thank Bob Souza, we want to thank Fred Baker, we want to thank Dr. Nash. They really paid attention to the grounds and the buildings in the district to get us ready, and Bob and his crew did an outstanding job. We appreciate that greatly. There have really been no new changes to the building. And other than the new staff, not too many changes. I've been working very closely with Dr. Natalie Dunning, and we've got some future plans for programming at the middle school that I'm going to let her talk about when it's time. But it was such a pleasure to get to know her, myself, Ms. Sullivan, and her worked very closely this summer, and I think we've got some exciting plans for the middle school that's going to provide a lot more equity and rigor at the school itself. As far as some special dates coming up, on September 19th, we're holding our back to school night. It's going to begin at 5:30 in the evening, where Dr. Dunning, myself, and Ms. Sullivan is going to give a little presentation about the future programming at the middle school that I hope many parents can attend. At 6 o'clock, then, the parents will get to follow their student schedule and just get a taste of what it's like to be a middle school student again, meeting their teachers and learning about the expectations of the middle school. It was really the highlight of our year. We always have received wonderful feedback about that, and I hope people can join us. On September 20th, I'm having coffee with the principal at 9 a.m. Coffee with the principal is something I started at the high school last year, and it was really well attended, and I'm anticipating we'll have good attendance as well at the middle school. And one other important date is on September 24th at 9:40, we're bringing back Rachel's Challenge to the middle school. Rachel's Challenge has been part of the middle school for the last 7 years, and Rachel's Challenge is just such a strong component of our school. It has built character, it has built students of outstanding respect and responsibility, and if you've never been to a Rachel's Challenge presentation, I really welcome you to try to participate in the ceremony on the 24th of September. Other than that, I'm all set. Once again, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to work at the high school last year. I learned a lot. I think I'm going to be a better middle school principal for it. But what is most comforting, I think, is the high school is in absolutely wonderful hands of Dr. Starkey, and she's going to really take it places I have utmost confidence in. But thank you.
Mr. Patoto, one quick question. What time was that coffee with you on Friday?
9 o'clock.
Okay. And do we bring our own coffee?
No.
Uh-oh. But you're not wearing a dress.
No, I'm not wearing a dress. Hello, thank you for having me. I have the pleasure tonight I'm Barbara Starkey, the high school principal. I have the pleasure tonight of introducing 7 of the 15 new staff members we've hired here at the high school. So we have with us tonight Maura Irwin, who is our art teacher that we happily stole from Dartmouth. Thank you. Please clap. We have Carol Gromet, who is joining us as a school psychologist. We have Ben Janowitz. He is our new assistant principal at the high school. We have Abel Lee, who is joining us in the social studies department. We have Dr. Andrew Mead, who is joining us in the physics department, the science department. We have Mindy Petrucci, who is a special education teacher. And last but not least, we have Daniel Rutledge, who is a member of the social studies department as well. Okay, and just to, thank you. Thank you much. And just to fill in the gaps, in your packet tonight or on the way to you is a handout with some information about these folks as well as the other new teachers that you will see around the school. So please read that when you have a chance. Okay, so the first day of school, I would like to tell you it went remarkably well. We did have a big glitch in the morning. Staff was ready. They were all wearing their brand new Apponequet Regional High School shirts that were compliments of the administration to welcome them back to school. The superintendent and the administration were outside, greeting the buses, waving to the children as they came in. 7:08, no bell. 7:10, no bell. 7:10 and 30 seconds, utter panic. I reach for the intercom, no intercom. Only to find out that we had been struck by lightning the night before school began. That's the bullhorn. So for 4 days, we functioned with bullhorns and walkie-talkies, and I'm very happy to hand this back tonight to Dave Patoto. Your hands now. So I'm happy to say, after 4 days without bells and an intercom and a lot of patience and cooperation on the part of students, staff, secretaries, and much help and support from Bob Souza, Fred Baker, Dr. Nash, and everybody down in Central, we managed to get through 4 days. And if you've been in a school, you know how important a PA system is. So I want to thank everyone for that. Other than that, it's been great. So I've made my way around to classes. Learning is the focus at the high school. Very happy to see the products going on in classrooms, the learning happening. I'd like to share with you that we converted the wood shop over the summer into an art room. It's a great space. I think students are loving it. I know for a fact that Maura Irwin, who gave up quite a bit when she came to us from Dartmouth, is really happy with her space, and it's going to lead to a lot of creativity with our students. We converted the former art room into another classroom, and the students in there are really flourishing because of their environment. Very happy about that. And we also converted another classroom to adapt for our new physics teacher, Dr. Mead, and our ever-growing population of students taking physics. So those are some nice things you've seen around the building. I also have to say that by the first day of school, this building was immaculate. So lots of thanks to the folks who made that happen, and we are working hard to keep it that way. So thank you very much. Just some up-and-coming events you need to know about. This Saturday is Laker Day. Please, please, please join us here at ARHS on the grounds. We start at 11 o'clock in the morning, and we're going to go straight through till about 6 o'clock at night. We have a day full of athletic competition and entertainment, so please come by. Kids in Jane Estrella's class were awfully excited today. They're getting prepared for the program. They're baking for you, so please come by and join us. We have back to school night on September 17th. Again, parents are invited to join their students from 6 to 8, and they will run the high school schedule with their students, much like the middle school. And then just to let you know, DECA is up and running. It's a very popular program we have here at the high school. And on September 20th, we have Red Sox Day at Fenway for our DECA students. So the kids are looking forward to that. Total enrollment, grade 9, 183, grade 10, 207, grade 11, 206, grade 12, 220. It's a big grade 12 class. We have 816 students in total as of yesterday. And then our class size, you have a breakout. I won't belabor you with all the numbers, but just letting you know that our highest class average right now is 23. Very pleased with that number. So I'd like to thank you all for your support, and I look forward to working with you this year.
Thank you. And I would also like to echo your thanks and thank Mr. Cavusio and his crew who painted the locker rooms, as well as the new weight room in the athletic corridor. I was here during the summer when it was going on. They did an outstanding job. The building looks beautiful.
They absolutely did. They did, and I thank you for mentioning that.
Just a couple of follow-ups to that. I had the great pleasure of meeting over 42 new hires in a variety of positions this summer, be they van drivers, lunch monitors, or the almost 16-plus staff at the high school. And as part of that, I think you could be very pleased if you met them and interviewed them and had the discussions that I had with them. We are in a very good place with all of the new hires. So having said that, I'd like to also go to the other end and just echo some of the comments about the opening of day from our district perspective, and that would be our opening day convocation. We talk about new people coming in, but as I spoke about, and I joke about this with the chair, and also I think I mentioned it with Mrs. Money, that the three of us did not get together to plan our speeches for opening day. But we all spoke about essentially the same thing, and that was about change, but yet about the tradition and about what makes Freetown-Lakeville such a wonderful place to be in, and that's the staff. And as I was going through putting together these service awards, and these are the apples that we gave out the opening day, starting with recognizing people who have had 15 years of continuous service and going up to 36-plus years from my right to left. And what's, I think, interesting and very telling, this district has gone through, as you know more than I know, so much change. Simply this year, 80% of our administrative team really has changed. We've hired 42 new staff in our district. Other people have moved in positions. And over the years, certainly with recalls and layoffs and changes in superintendents, and I joked about that in the opening day. And what really hit me was the fact that what has remained the same and constant are the people. And I think it's important for me to note, when I was putting together the service awards, that we recognized 74 individuals who had 15 to 36 years of service. That added up to 1,617 years of service to this district. So when you say that, what it says to you really clearly is that through all of the changes, the people who remain and the people who are the backbone of any organization are those people who day to day are in classrooms, in support roles, in working with students. And I think that's something to be very proud of. You know, sometimes we overlook that, kind of passes us on. And when I started to see this list, looking at those individuals, just the people who had 15 to 19 years, we were looking at 636 total years of service. So I think that speaks volumes about this district. And I was really pleased to be able to do that and to have that opportunity to say thank you, because you remained and you will be here and you will continue to be the backbone of this district, no matter. Superintendents will come and go, administrators will come and go, school committee members will come and go, but they remain. And this town, both towns, should be very, very proud of that. So wanted to just say that. So I thank Mr. Noguera for coming, Mr. Davenport representing the school committee, Paula and Bob and I, if we're you two will still be here. Maybe you may or may not get together for opening day again for the speech, but I do hope the tradition continues. It's a wonderful way to recognize staff. And we had all of our staff there. And I'd like to end by saying thank you to another group. I think I may have been the reason why Bob Sousa isn't here this evening. He has a very bad back, and I hope I didn't cause it. But Bob has seen me probably more than he has cared to see me this summer. In June, when I first came on board, making my tours of the buildings with him, pointing out things that needed to be done, that I hoped would be done. In August, when we made the tour again, and Mrs. Gomes came with us representing the school committee on that tour. And then constantly, I think I have him on speed dial, where I'm saying, we need to get that done, we need to get that done. Can you add that to your list of things? Never have I heard from any of the staff, including the man who heads up our facilities division, if you will. No, we can't do that. You know, they go about their jobs with a smile. I think they're happy to do it. And I think it's important for us to say that we recognize that work that they've done. I think Bethany summed it up when we walked into and we were doing our tour August 30th of the buildings, particularly Grace. I held my breath as I was saying, are they going to get this done? Pointing out all of the things that still needed, and they did. They were in there over the weekends. They're in here most weekends. If I show up on a Sunday, I run into Bob. So I want to say thank you, a big thank you to all of them. They have worked above and beyond. They are still shorthanded. We are still filling a maintenance position due to retirement. We have moved in our 2 permanent people for 2 positions, and we still are looking to fill a couple of the part-time that have now opened up as a result of part-time people moving into permanent. So we're still working a little understaffed, getting back to where we need to be, and what is in your budget for staff. So I thank them. They have worked tirelessly, and I'm sure they will continue to be working tirelessly, as my list always gets added to as I walk through buildings. So I do appreciate that. So having said that, that really concludes our opening day reports.
Thank you.
And we'll entertain any questions that the committee may have.
I'd just like to echo a few comments. I was very, very impressed with the convocation and the opening day and with the service awards. I felt that the staff came in very positive. They were very excited. And what were they excited about? Teaching and learning and educating our children. And I thought it was great that we honored the custodians and the maintenance staff for all the hard work they did over the summer. At this point, I'll open it up to the committee. Any questions? Nope. Everybody good? Okay. Continue on.
Okay, thank you. Under personnel, so it gives me great pleasure now to introduce our last administrative hire, I hope, in this district for this year and for a long time. It's been a busy summer, hiring staff as well as administrative staff, and certainly even prior to my coming on board, a lot of work done by the individual who sat in this chair. So it gives me great pleasure this evening to introduce Kim Sofrino, who will be joining us, as Mr. Morris indicated, on September 16th. Kim has certainly been in the district working unofficially, because she still is under the employment for the Canton Public Schools as an elementary principal. Kim, as you know, we did a very long, intensive search, and the job was really, in charge to the committee, was not just to fill the seat, but to fill the seat with the right person, and that we would keep that seat empty until we found that right person. And it took us 2 times, but I can tell you that the committee felt The administrative team felt that we did it right, and I certainly know that we did it right. Kim comes with a great deal of experience. She's been a sitting principal for the last 17 years. It was something that I felt was very important for this district, looking at the transition and all the new staff who had moved into positions, to have a good balance. I think Mr. LaBelle would echo that he has someone on the other side, if you will, that he can speak to, certainly, and can share, and who has the background and experience in a number of districts. Most recently, her position that she is leaving is as principal in Canton at the John Kennedy Elementary School. Prior to that, she spent a great deal of time in Fall River. When you look at her resume in your package, you'll see that she doesn't move around, that she stays in places for a period of time. She was in Fall River opening a brand new school, transitioning people into that, and also working very closely to take a school that was underperforming to a higher level. So she comes with that full cadre of knowledge that you get, and you only get that when you've been in this chair for a long time. And I think that's the wonderful addition that you've got. You've got someone who can balance our team, who brings a great deal of experience and knowledge to the district, and quite frankly, who is a resident of Asana, which I think certainly can only help us. So she understands the culture coming in. She is committed. And when we had our conversation, one of the things she said, I was in Canton for 1 year, and I saw this position when it opened, and I had always wanted to come back here. And, but I didn't feel it was the right time for me professionally to make that move. I never dreamed that it would open up again, and it did. So when we say that timing is everything, it certainly is. So I would introduce to you Mrs. Kimberly Sofrino, who will start as the Freetown Elementary principal, hopefully for a long run, another long tenure like in Fall River. So Kim, I don't welcome you if you would like to say anything. We put you on the spot right now.
Thank you for your kind words, Dr. Nash. I'm very, very excited about Monday and brand new opening day. I said goodbye to the students and staff at JFK yesterday, and have been dabbling in some of the meetings at Freetown-Lakeville over the last couple of weeks. And I am just really excited. I'm sure I'll have the first day of school jitters come Monday morning, although everyone else got that out of the way a week ago. So I look forward to working with all of you, and I'm very, very excited to be here. It's going to be a great year, so thank you.
Thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
Your voice seems to be a little low, so Mr. Patota has a megaphone you could borrow. Welcome.
The next topic on the agenda is a proposed school committee calendar of presentations that I provide for the school committee. One of the things that I thought might be helpful for the committee is to look at some of the special topics presentations that typically are mandated, if you will, like approval of handbooks, looking at school improvement plans, and certainly our budget presentation, but to look at the entire year at once and to understand from time to time there'll be meetings when we'll be presenting to you certain timely topics, our MCAS presentations, and bringing in some program updates right before we get into the budget discussion, our athletic budget, facilities, food program, and so forth. But above and beyond that, I wanted to try to work into all of this the reason why we're here, which is for students. And I thought, remembering back to when I sat on a school committee, we sometimes lost that because we were so tied up in everything else. So I've asked principals, and you can see we've simply said featured presentation by a school. That will be a committee meeting where the school committee will hear from hopefully students and maybe a teacher or two with a presentation to you of maybe some timely projects, something that's upcoming, or whatever, so that we kind of remember why we do this. And they'll be short, but I think from time to time it's important. So we've worked those in. If we can work in more, we will. But I give this to you. It's a working document. It's nothing that you need to approve. It's just something that I wanted to kind of lay out for you for the year so that you would have this and you would know. We can post this on the website knowing that it may be revised because there will be some times when parents will want to come to these meetings when they know particularly that this will be the topic that will be on the agenda in addition to all the other topics that typically are on the agenda. So I wanted to just give you this and provide this. And if you have any feedback, think of anything else, you can certainly add it.
Thank you.
Okay. You heard, I think, Mr. Pitoda talk a little bit about the middle school schedule and the fact that we worked very hard to ensure that we had one schedule starting this year, that we were had continuity in that schedule. But also, one of the things that initially Dr. Dunnan and I and Dave Pitoda and Liz Sullivan had some opportunity, and primarily it was those three and not myself, was to really look at this issue about equity and the whole philosophy of middle schools and why middle schools exist. And the fact that we hopefully have students enrolled in a middle school to get a taste of some of the courses that typically they will begin to specialize in as they move into their high school program, particularly in the upper grades in high school, in art and music and PE, technology and so forth, and how we could provide opportunities for all students in their middle school career to have all of those. So that's what we're working to do. We're working to make sure that we have equity for all students and that we, at the middle school, are able to say that all students have the opportunity to be in an elective, and therefore, as they move on to the high school, parents and students and high school staff can continue to make good decisions based on what students express as an interest, because maybe that interest was driven by what happened at the middle school. So, having said that, I wanted to at least give an opportunity for Dr. Dunning to present to you a schedule, a phase-in, if you will, of what this will look like over the next few years. Dr. Dunning.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It is an enclosure in your packet that looks as such, and this is a proposed schedule. Mr. Pitoda, Ms. Sullivan, and myself met several times over the summer to have some conversations about, as Dr. Nash said, the philosophy of a middle school, and about not starting to specialize too early in a student's educational career so that they would have lots of opportunities. And through some investigation and some discussion, we found that only some of our students were able to take Spanish in the middle school, only some students were able to take art, only some students were able to take intro to computers, etc. And so there were students who may have had 3 years of art in their middle school experience and other students who will have no art in their middle school experience. And that doesn't lead to a really nice entry to the high school, because obviously when students start taking those kinds of courses at the high school level, there's a huge discrepancy in the background information that they have. Luckily this year, there seems to be a perfect storm at the middle school, and by that I mean we have the right number of core classes on team, and we have the right number of mixed team classes where students go off their core team to receive other classes. And we were able to sit down through a series of meetings with first the Spanish teachers, then those teachers who teach the traditionally elective courses, and then teachers who teach the on-team course, which is their 5th subject course, and really have a conversation about the types of things that we were sharing or promoting for our middle school students. When I say it's the perfect storm, we were able to look at this schedule that had lots of inequity in it and turn it around so that over a 3-year period, we are able to put a scheduling in place that will result in every student having every course that's offered at the middle school. So every year, students will take Spanish, grades 6, 7, and 8. And for a majority of our students, that means they will complete Spanish 1 prior to entering the high school, which is great. It will allow them to take Spanish 2 at the high school, and then also have opportunities to take 2 years of another language, which is a really great opportunity, especially for those kids who are applying to 4-year colleges that like to see that breadth of experience with languages. Every student will take art every year that they're at the middle school, and that's going to allow the art teachers to really look at a variety of visual arts techniques. We are looking at every student taking music, whether it's general music, band, or chorus, so that no student will go through their middle school experience without having an opportunity to participate in that subject area. And then what you can see here is that starting this year, based on the staff that we currently have, we are able to offer 100% of our students PE and art and world culture. We are phasing some transition in with that Spanish program. This year's 6th graders will start their first third of Spanish. This year's 7th graders will start their first half of Spanish. This year's 8th graders, it's sort of what makes the difference in this schedule. The students who had Spanish last year will be able to finish the Spanish this year. And each year you can see where grade 9 in blue at the bottom shows how many students will be likely to be ready to take Spanish 2 once they go to the high school level. So it's a really exciting opportunity for us to really embrace the middle school model, to give students lots of different exposure to different kinds of subjects. And we have a staff that I think felt pretty involved in making that decision. They had lots of opportunity to brainstorm any glitches we might run into, either with the physical building or the way the teams were set up, or even to take some time to brainstorm some concerns that we think might be brought forward by parents. And we're really happy to be able to present a schedule that matches the kinds of philosophy that our middle school model is based on. Any questions?
I don't want to, when I ask this question, this is a wonderful thing, and I don't want you, when I ask, to think that I think any less. What happened to French in the middle school? Because I took French when I was in middle school. I didn't know that it wasn't.
Caught in a budget situation
Okay.
where getting a new role, had to make a tough decision, was a retiring teacher.
Right.
Two veteran Spanish teachers, so it wasn't an easy decision, but it was more of a budgetary issue, not because we didn't love French. But we're going to work very hard at adding another foreign language, working with Dr. Starkey, and we'd love to add one. I know she would like to add another one to the high school. So it's definitely part of the full thing.
I was just surprised because I didn't know that it had gone anywhere until I saw this. So
It wasn't in our current staffing. And this also, like I said, by putting in this new schedule, it takes one whole year out of the high school experience that they will have, already
we
accomplished.
started writing
So
French 2 and Spanish 2 as French.
Yep.
I just, like I said, I didn't know French had gone away. So when I saw this, I was thinking it was being cut now and not
No,
that it had
no.
been already.
we don't have it currently.
Okay.
What's cool about this is that I think when you was jumping in Spanish too, was a minority of kids doing that.
Right.
This model is going to allow 90% of the kids to be ready for Spanish 2 in high school.
That's excellent. That's excellent.
Anyone else from the committee? Nope, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you,
And
Dr.
Obviously, there'll be some down the road as this gets totally implemented. It has implications for programming that are positive, I think, at the high school. So I think that's in and of itself a very good opportunity for us. Moving on, we under old business, the school committee had asked the director of finance to come back with information regarding the status of the elementary lease that I believe was part of the regional agreement. So Mr. Baker is this evening ready to present some information, and I think probably seeking some direction from the committee as to next steps.
Okay. I went back and looked at the lease situation, and my apologies to the three of you who were here when this was discussed before, because this will be redundant, but essentially, the lease was developed by the Lakeville attorney, who happens to be the same attorney that represents Freetown, so that clearly is a plus. And it was developed in the format that you have. The lease was then submitted to our attorney, Michael Long, And the comments on the right-hand side are his comments. So, I mean, what we kind of have at the end of the day is, you know, two sets of directions from two different attorneys. And at this point, you know, I think we need a process to move forward. I certainly can follow up on whatever process you'd like, or I can suggest a process. But if you have a process you'd like to move forward on, but the present lease basically it has, you know, the direction of their attorney and the direction of our attorney.
What's your recommendation, Mr.
Well,
Baker?
I would entertain that people on the committees submit changes that they would like to see, not necessarily changes of a legal nature, but in terms of the substantive parts of it. And then we can work, you know, I can put those together and see what the consensus appear to be, and then submit it back to you, and if need be, submit it to the attorney to make sure that it's the appropriate legal language, or work any other process you'd like.
I agree with that suggestion. My concern, I believe I raised once before, when you get on the first page of this to the third paragraph, the second paragraph that's beginning whereas, that paragraph as it stands, when this is modified for Freetown Elementary School, that paragraph will not work as it's written. You will end up with the Highway Department that way as well. Because they're the same property. It's the same book, it's the same page, it's the same parcel. So there will need to be some either a survey will need to be done or something else. There was also a boundary line dispute between the elementary school parcel and one of the adjoining residential parcels that may need a survey to resolve.
Well, you know, that's the kind of input that I need, and, you know, and clearly, you know, there'll have to be two different leases, but the fact that they're represented by the same attorney while the leases will be different, you know, you don't get any philosophical hang-ups that way, and it's easier.
How does the committee feel about putting this back on the agenda for the 25th meeting? We do have a light agenda, so we could add this, give us a chance to go through this thoroughly, mock it up with all our comments and suggestions, and then bring it back to Mr. Baker on the 25th of September.
Are you suggesting that we bring it back on the 25th to discuss it, or are we giving all our comments and suggestions to Mr. Baker ahead of time so that we'd accomplish more, I think?
Yeah, I think that sounds, if that's all right with the rest of the committee.
I think that idea is a much better one.
So, okay, Mr. Clark?
Yeah, Fred, has the attorney that drafted this for the town become aware of the comments that our attorney has indicated? Has that been submitted back to them for review?
My understanding is that it was submitted back to them, and they, you know, did not take it up, and they looked at it, but didn't respond. It didn't really, you know, deal with it in a substantive way.
Well, I would put in a request that we get some kind of response from them on those comments.
I'm going to recognize the chair of the Lakeville Board of Selectmen, who happens.
Wait until afterwards if you like, but generally, we read through the changes that your attorney made, and we just said we're not accepting any of them. I don't know any lease or leaseor where the person that owns the building actually doesn't go with their own lease. So we had our attorney drafted, and I believe the Copeland and Page also drafted the Freetown agreement. I haven't looked at the Freetown agreement, I'm sure it's very similar. But it was drafted for them paid for by Freetown to do the same thing. But I don't know anybody, any corporation or anybody that would say, here's my building, you can lease it, but then you're gonna come up and say, well, oh, we don't like your terms, we're gonna come up with our own. It doesn't really work that way, so we just, some of the things that your attorney marked up were just, it just wasn't even worth addressing. So we rejected it, gave it back our lease, and said, this is the lease. If there's something outrageous, we'll talk about it, but I don't think there's anything outrageous in the lease. It's just a lease.
Thank you.
I think, to be honest with you, you can get together, you can mark it up, and you put it back to your attorney, but it's still gonna come back to us and we're gonna say, no, we're not taking that lease. This is our lease, you're the leasee, we're the leaseholder. That's the way it is. It just, I don't think there's anything outrageous in that. One thing in particular, I haven't looked at it in a long time, one thing in particular was, you don't have the right to sublease our lease to somebody else. And that's what was suggested in that language that came back from your attorney. We're leasing the building to you and only to the school district. If you don't want the building anymore, it's our building. We'll go lease it to somebody else or use it in some other fashion. I think that's kind of what we've been reading through, the changes. Excuse me, I have a bit of a... I don't remember. It's been 2 years. It should have been done 2 years ago. But I appreciate you bringing it up.
Thank you.
Not to make it sound like a complaint, but this is exactly the problem with not having gotten this lease done in the 6+ months that we had after regionalization was approved. And Scott's giving us a position that Lakeville is going to stand on. I don't know where to go with that. Are we just going to forever be at odds with the terms of the lease and never sign a lease? I'd like to know who's exposed to what in that kind of situation. Some insurance company somewhere has to be unhappy that we haven't tied this up at this point. And if something catastrophic happens, the lack of a lease in place is going to be an issue.
Agreed.
I mean, hopefully nothing bad ever happens. That's the hope that I'm sure everybody has. But I mean, leases are there for many reasons. And we don't want to be in a position where something happens and we really should have had that lease in place, both for the town's sake and for the school committee's sake. So we got the clock running, 2 years plus.
Is that the official position of the Lakeville Board of Selectmen?
Let me give you a little bit of background, because a lot of people are new. What happened originally was, we were asking for this lease when I first came on the board, for months and months and months. And we were told by, back then it was Mr. McCarthy, that he actually told the school committee, oh yeah, I gave them a lease. Well, he never gave us a lease. The lease came out in May. He copied it from the town of Chelmsford, or he copied the lease from somebody else and said, oh, here's the lease. And we brought it to our attorney, and they marked it up from there and came back and said, no, this doesn't work at all. So they carefully, they spent a lot of time on it and brought it back. And then we sent it over to you people back, I think, a year and a half. And that's when it came back with all these changes, like, oh, we want to be able to do all these other things. And like, no, we own the building. You can't sublease our lease. We're not going to allow that. I mean, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't be fair to the taxpayers of Lakeville. And there's a couple things, if there's a couple things that bother you in the lease, we can talk about it without going to attorneys and find out what it is that really bothers you. But generally, if I'm going to lease a building, and I go to the owner and I say, geez, I don't like your lease, I'm going to come up with my own, and we go do all these other things, he's going to tell me, go rent somewhere else. No, you can't do that here, obviously. But it's just, there's legal things that we need to have in place, and we can't let you assign it to somebody else, so someone else can sublease that building. And I think that was one of the major sticking points, and we just looked at it and said, what? This is absurd. We're leasing the building to you for $1 for our kids, not leasing it to you so you can make money on it by leasing it to somebody else and decide to move out of it. That can't happen. And that was one of the things in that lease that came back.
Is that the official position of the Lake? Are you speaking for the Lakeville Board of Selectmen as a whole, or as just an individual member?
We have a brand new board, other than myself. I don't think anybody on the board has even looked at this lease. I could be mistaken, but because they weren't here. It's been that long. The changes were just way too many changes. We had paid someone to do it. We actually asked you guys to do it first, and it wasn't, it really was just the last minute thing that Mr. Coffey put together.
Okay, thank you.
On Carolyn's comment, I think we should set our own deadline if we are gonna make any suggestions. Scott didn't close the door entirely on suggestions, he's just saying that for the most part, the town doesn't really have an interest in accepting the bulk of them, if there's something that we really feel, you know, serious about. But anyhow, we should impose a deadline on ourselves several days ahead of the next meeting so that Fred has enough time to be prepared for the meeting, rather than just leaving it up to, you know, the email that happens the night before the meeting, or that sort of scenario. So it's been years. I mean, I don't think we really need any more than a week.
So how about Friday the 20th, to have them all in by the end of the business day?
It's fine by me.
Noting that set of objections, I'd like to ask at the same deadline that we send this draft back with the comments to both boards of selectmen and ask them to get back by the same day or similar day with what comments are totally off the table for them and what there's some open discussion on, so we know what not to waste our time with and what, you know, to go forward with. 'Cause I had some of the same concerns when I was reading the part about subletting on the Freetown Elementary side. My first thought was, you know, if there are vacant classrooms, we should make sure that there's no town need for them, where we still have some departments that don't have offices, that don't have storage. So I can completely understand the concerns with the subletting. I had notes myself on the same subject.
But putting town departments in an elementary school building is it's going to be very difficult at best if they're open to the public and you need to have access to the public, because people coming in the school need to be quarried.
No, I get your point, but
we need to protect the children first.
Yeah. But I'm just, you know, because one of the points that was raised to me by one of the Freetown selectmen last week was the building is still owned by the town of Freetown. If they wanted to make a use of it somehow, whatever the process they went through, they might want to be open to that discussion, whether it's possible or not. So that's why I say, you know, I raised the same concern. So I think to have them reach out, both towns, and say, these are the areas that we're not going to discuss at all. These are the areas where we, you know, we'll have that discussion, will save us some time.
Excellent suggestion. Okay.
Again, I would rather have you come to us and say, these are the things that bother us in this lease, not the other way around, because we own the building.
Yeah.
The taxpayers own that building with Lakeville. And the same thing with Freetown. Taxpayers of Freetown own the building that the elementary kids in. Now, we don't have, I don't think they have any problem with leasing it to the school system for education purposes, neither do we.
Right.
My knowledge is that we can't have any town things inside the school with the school there. An insurance company says no, and our attorney says no. So it's just, you can't have that. I mean, you wouldn't want that anyways.
I think we only use it for the elections now, so.
But I guess what part of that lease that was changed was that if you moved out, you could lease it to another school collaborative, like a charter school, something like that, to make money off it, but you don't own the building. You only own the right to use the building for $1 a year, as long as it's for Lakeville residents, students that are going through the school. Other than that, the town will take it back over and will lease it out. So that was part of the language that was changed in that agreement. If there's something you don't like on our end, my suggestion is you come back to us and say, this is one thing we don't like, and we work on it. Change the whole lease agreement, you know, take two attorneys, they can change everything, and we spend a lot of money, you're spending our money, you're spending the town of Lakeville has Freetown's money.
Absolutely.
Money attorneys, you might see really no reason.
Okay.
Unless it's something outrageous that you guys don't like, let us know. We don't meet again until the 23rd.
Does Freetown have a similar lease signed for our buildings?
There is
No.
none.
No signed lease.
Yes, Freetown is drafted the same exact lease.
They had-
So that hasn't been signed either?
No.
Correct.
That's why it was
This has
brought
been
up.
going on for, what, a year and 2 years?
Since full regionalization. This should have been resolved, like Mr. Davenport said, in the first 6 months.
Just one follow-up on that. I mean, I'm new here as well. He said that the lease was only good for Lakeville residents, students, and does that mean no Freetown students can go there? You just said that.
We had the attorney draft our lease for Aswell. The Copeland Page drafted the same lease for Freetown.
No, I understand that. I understand, but you just said just about 2 minutes ago that the lease is for Lakeville residents, students only.
Well, it's We're
Why does that
renting the
leave?
building to the school district.
Correct, so it'd be Lakeville or Freetown students, whatever student needs are.
But Freetown gets-
Because it's a district now, it's a region, so,
Good point.
so it doesn't say that in this lease, that would be one of the, okay, because you just said it did. So I just want to clarify that, that's all.
Well, it's implied that we both will have our own elementary schools as part of the agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any?
Should get it done.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think,
Nuts.
I think Mr. Davenport is right in his point that it should have been done within the first 6 months of, once the towns approve the full regional agreement,
Both
so.
Freetown and Lakeville, now you got liabilities out here.
Okay.
We got a lot of exposure, so, all right, we'll get it done. Okay, anybody else from the committee? Thank you,
So we'll
Scott.
put it back on the agenda on the 25th.
Oh, one more.
Would it also be possible for the people that have experience on the committee with what's going on with this lease to maybe just briefly enumerate to us, even an email, what it is we're looking at and why what's the contention? I mean, a lease is a lease, unless it says something like we have to pay incredible amounts of money or insure things out of our pocket.
I think the big concern, if memory
Elephant in
serves.
the room, right? What's going on here?
I think the big concern was the fact that we have tons of extra space at the Freetown Elementary School, and we wanted to be able to sublease that out while we were occupying the building to a collaborative or start a program in there ourselves, and use that as a revenue-generating source to help offset the school budget. So, which the Lakeville Board of Selectmen.
We don't have any objection what you do with Freetown.
No, but if it was the same in Assawamsett, though.
I see.
Yeah,
You don't want us to sublease the building even if we're occupying it for classes.
well, if you left the building, that also states that you can then sublease those facilities.
Okay, but if we don't leave the building,
I think we're,
Mr. Powderly?
I think the Selectman Aaron's new to it, but we read the agreement back in the Council of Aging, when there was a meeting back, I'll say a year or more ago. And certainly the sticking point was the subleasing, but I think when we leave it to two opposing attorneys, it should be simple. We lease you a building for $1. The insurance is covered and paid for by the school system. If the school burned, as an example, but it did, but if it did, the check simply gets made out to Lakeville to replace the school. It should be a very simple lease. If we just go back and forth, it's a problem. If in fact it was to sublease for an educational purpose, that really gets into charter schools, it gets into Reedy's, it gets into other things. And if it's gonna be subleased and there's money to be made, town would be happy to take that back in its pocket. So distribute it where it may be. It may not be a bad idea if it's for educational purposes, but there has to be an accounting of that money.
Agreed.
And we'd rather say if the school was half empty, we'd go to a collaborative. Subleasing. I mean, it's a $1 lease. It should not be complicated. It should say, building's insured, who does the plowing, what's a repair, what's a capital improvement, and that's it. That's a good point. Two attorneys can go at it for the next 2 years and spend money. We don't want to spend another minute. I mean, that's so subleasing it, even for educational purposes, outside of the school system, I think we would possibly have a problem.
Okay. All right, thank you. Anybody else from the committee? And thank you both for sharing that information with us. It'll help, hopefully, speed the process up. Okay, Dr. Nash. Next on the agenda, we have K-5 class sizes.
We have the most up-to-date class sizes, and this is a follow-up and a request from the school committee, a directive from the school committee, to come back to the committee with any kind of a proposal, albeit there would be one, on the potential to reduce class sizes, particularly at AES and/or Grace, which were the concerns of the committee as I understood them. And the charge to the superintendent was to develop a proposal or recommendation as as the superintendent would see fit, and to bring back some potential funding sources. So you have in your packet this evening really a summary and a proposal that I am recommending to the school committee this evening, and I'll walk through that with you. The building principals are here, Mr. LaBelle and Ms. Penalt are here this evening to discuss this. After our meeting last Thursday, I met with them again. Of course, we had been discussing this over the course of a brief period of time. I also met with Mr. Baker. And the recommendation that I'm making to the school committee this evening is that we would add 2 grade 4 teachers at Grace for the 13-14 school year. The estimated cost, including salary and health benefits, $100,000 to $110,000. And I'll talk about the potential funding sources, which is certainly a concern that we have. But we will share with you what could look to be some areas that the committee may decide if they see fit. Rationale certainly goes back to the discussion around class size. If we look overall at our elementary schools and we look at the number of classes, unquestionably grade 4 with, at this point, 8 classes, has the highest overall class sizes. You heard the principals this evening talk about ranges. So if you pull out Grace and look at grade 4, you'll see it's 27, 27, 27, 27. So that becomes, number one, that certainly is a concern. Of all of our elementary grades, consistently, that has the largest class size. The addition of 2 teachers in grade 4 substantially reduces the class size. When we talk about the impact of class size on student achievement, we really are looking at couple of things. One, the question of whether or not reducing a class from 27 to 25 has really any impact is pretty negligible when you look at all the research. If there's a magic number, it certainly is a lot lower than 25, where you want your classes to be, where the research tends to suggest that you will see better student achievement as a result of that reduction in class size. We know that's only one reason that impacts student achievement, the number one being the quality of the teacher. So looking at that, when we put 2 teachers in, we substantially reduce class size from 27 to 22, which I think is a substantial reduction. It's also in keeping with what's going on in grade 5. So we're seeing some parity there as our students come into the district from both of our sending elementary schools moving into our intermediate school. We're now looking at least a similarity in class size. So that's another factor to consider as to why we would put the teachers there. It also is a preparation for us. When I looked at what we have as incoming students from grade 3 next year for your FY15 budget, you'll see that I provided you with that information that our grade 3 total enrollment already is at 226, which is 7 students more, or maybe even 8 now, more than what we currently have. So you're going to be dealing with that as soon as we have our discussion in FY15. So it would put us in a better position if we could do this now, because I sense that we may be coming back to you as part of our budget discussion. Also be aware, as I spoke with Bethany, that you did have 10 teachers in the not-so-distant past, I believe. That this is the first year of cutting that, so that's something to consider. So those are some major factors as to why I would make that recommendation. There are some ancillary factors, certainly. I think at grade 4, it's a little bit easier probably for kids to make that move. When you start looking at grade 1, we talk about kids being adaptable, and they certainly are, but it tends to be probably that the upper grades are a little bit more nonchalant about making that change in October, if you will. It would also continue to parallel the model that we currently have of 2 teacher teams, because one discussion that we had, Bethany and I, was what would happen if we created a singleton. And I think we agree, and I agree wholeheartedly, that the model that we have chosen, and I think it's a very effective model, is 2 teacher teams. It helps us to really differentiate. It helps our teachers to become, if you will, specialists in content areas. And when we look at the richness and the density of the Common Core today, there's a reason why we asked them to do that. So it's not anything that is broadly new, but it's something that a lot of middle schools, intermediate schools will follow. Grade 4 is also a very focused grade for MCAS. We anticipate that in PARC assessments, we will continue to see that it will be a very focused grade. Currently, I think they have composition, reading, ELA, and math, so they really get hit that year. We also have some concerns about our student achievement. You know, remember, they're adjusting too. They're coming in from 2 sending schools. And although we certainly strive to articulate in any district in all of your elementary schools the curriculum, there is a change factor there. Just getting in and off of a bus that takes them to a different school. So the fact that we would even consider putting a model that would have a single teacher team didn't make sense. And I would suggest to you that if the committee is thinking about that we probably would go back to the drawing board, because I think it's probably going to be a better use of our money to just stay with what we have as opposed to doing 1 teacher in grade 4. At least that would be my recommendation. So, having said that, the question always is, well, how do we fund that? You heard us talk about the concerns that we have early on in the school year about our budget, some of the areas in special ed, contractual services. I think Mr. Baker spoke to you about where we stand right now, having run the first payroll for all of our professional staff and paraprofessionals. We anticipate that at this point in time, we're $180,000 to the good. That will change in a heartbeat, as we have at least $110,000 right now in contractual services that we have not been able to find in our budget. That are services, as you know, that we talked about, that students are entitled to under special needs. So to take the entire salary for this out of our salary line item, while it could be done, it's early on in the year for us to really, for me to feel comfortable saying that would be the easiest way that we should go. So the other potential, as we met, Mr. Baker and I, where do we have any wiggle room? Salary constitutes about 80% of your budget. It's the most movable target at any given time. It goes up and down depending on maternity leaves, depending on who you hire in. You saw that we did 16 new hires at the high school. That doesn't come cheaply, because you don't hire in high school physics teachers when typically there are 6 physics teachers in the state of Massachusetts who get certified at any given year. You don't hire them in at starting salary. And you certainly didn't hire in Mr. Mead with a PhD at the low end. So having said that, I inherited a budget that had probably a set salary of maybe a master's step 4, and there could be areas where we had to go over. But even doing that, we have $180,000 running that payroll right now with all the hires that we had at the time we ran the payroll for 9-4. We had about $180,000 that we were looking at to the good. And I know business managers, directors of finance hate to say that number, because they know that that's not going to stay the same. But I just wanted you to know that we did not overspend in that area. We have, as you know, positions that you had approved as part of your FY14 budget that either are not funded but are not filled at this point, because we are in the interviewing process, just beginning that process for our 612 supervisors, for our curriculum integration specialist, and the para-intervention interventionists still need to be bargained. So those positions and that money is in our budget, but has not been directed to individuals right now. So the second option is to utilize, that I'm suggesting for consideration, is to utilize the salary line for one of the 3 positions for the technology integration specialist by funding only 2 this year, as opposed to the 3. That is approximately $60,000. There's $180,000, $60,000 per position that was in the budget for FY14. Those salaries could range anywhere from mid-50s to a little bit over 60, depending on the experience of the individual. And then to take the rest from our salary line item. So there's a potential. Again, I think if you don't address this, and it's not at all meant to sway you, it's simply that we probably will be talking to you based on the numbers for the incoming grade 4, as you go through the budget process for next year. So that's where we are, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you. I'll open it up to the committee. Go ahead, Mr. Popovich.
Was there any consideration also for grade 2, 3, or 5 on any of the other, like we had talked about other forms of assistance, whether they're TAs or paras or anything? Is there anything needed that came up?
I did not speak about particularly paraprofessional. I was looking at classroom teachers first, so that when I spoke with both principals, I think we were first thinking that the best way for us was to try to address it through increasing our teachers. So, no. So the answer is no.
I think Bob went.
No, go ahead, Carmen.
I was just going to ask, currently, do we have any support staff in our lower grade levels at all besides the classroom teachers?
You would have support staff where in inclusion classrooms and students who had one-on-ones. Kindergarten, it's my understanding that the kindergarten teachers have paraprofessionals, but I think as part of your budget, you had eliminated most of the general education paras. And if I might just add on to the question that was asked prior to you, I think one of the issues that you run into when you are adding paras, it's where do we add them for equity? We almost have to put them across the board in all of our classrooms in a grade when we're doing that, because then we really go back to that issue of equity. If we want to target a grade, then we probably almost want to target either all 5 classrooms or 6 classrooms or however many. So that was one of the things too in thinking about that.
Okay, Mr. Clark.
Yeah, can you tell me where these technology specialists were going to be deployed? Are you going
They're
to go from 2 to 3?
System-wide. It's my understanding in discussing with Craig that there was not a sense that they wanted to deploy them in a particular school. They wanted to make them system-wide. We had some preliminary discussion with Dr. Dunning and Craig and myself as they're going to, lead this process in looking at first the best candidates and then looking at whether or not we wanted to make one secondary and one elementary, in other words, one K-5, but they were going to be floaters throughout the district. It's my understanding that there wasn't significantly a discussion about putting them in a building per se, because there were only 3 to begin with. But you may know more about that than I, because I wasn't, here when initially this discussion happened.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Anyone else from the committee?
A question first. Does anybody remember the length of term on the bonds for the technology upgrade?
10 years, I thought.
It might be. I can't remember myself.
It might be 5.
5.
5.
It might be 5. 5 on the bonds, and then 10 years seems to be a general term about when this technology is going to be needing a major upgrade, to step into whatever that future is. So there's a hidden cost. If we slow down implementation, I'd like to find out how much this will slow down implementation, because the less we use the system, the more we waste, because if you go by the 5-year bonds or you go by the 10-year life of the system, you're looking at either $200,000 or $100,000 a year, depending upon how you look at it, if we delay implementation of the system. So we might be diverting some money, but we might also be costing ourselves in terms of the life of that system and the utilization by all of our kids.
Okay, thank you. My feeling is with grade 4, that's a major transition for the kids. Number one, you're bringing Lakeville and Freetown kids together for the first time. They're getting the L word in the school, lockers, which I know is a major transition for the kids and stuff. I actually did talk to a couple 4th graders over the weekend when I was out with their parents. And that is a major transition for them, and it is an MCAS POC assessment year, and if we do have the money, I think my own personal opinion is the money would be better spent hiring a couple of classroom teachers to keep the numbers down low. so that way we can continue educating the kids.
I support personally the adding the teachers. I'm asking questions about the funding source, just to clarify.
Okay. Carolyn?
The class sizes in the lower grades concern me. And I would just like to throw out a proposed option for funding would be the interventionist positions. And I know they haven't been, and I mention them because they haven't been hired and they haven't been fully bargained yet. I'm looking at what we can do to benefit the classrooms now as opposed to, we don't know how long it's going to take to bargain, and I would much rather see the committee and see the district go slowly and do it right so that all parties are happy before we make this final move. And if there's a way that we can help these lower grades, I would like to see us do that. I'm not saying anything about grade 4. I'm totally in support of grade 4 as well. I'm just looking at the lower class sizes, the lower grade levels right now. We have the appropriate funding for the interventionist position that we've already budgeted for. And our next meeting is on the 18th. It could happen right away, but it also might not. It might take 2 or 3, more meetings. And we're just further out down the road as far as the school year goes.
So are you suggesting that, just so that I understand, looking at that, the funding coming out of the interventionist positions, that's also $180,000 that I believe was set aside for those
Correct.
positions. There are 6 of them. They are all at the elementary school. I think, if I understand correctly, if we do that, and we certainly can look at that, we'll need to have some wiggle room because I believe that part of the position are needed for coverage. And I know at least in one school, potentially not in our other elementary school. So that's just something to throw out. It's not a large sum of money, but I know that Mr. LaBelle has some coverage issues, and the para would be used to do some of that, such as recess lunch duty, in addition to the fact that we've hired the lunch and recess monitors who come midday. So that's the only thing. But
I would strictly leave all of that up to you, to be perfectly honest with you. My concern is just the classrooms, in addition to whatever else you
Are you
need.
asking, if I could ask just another clarifying question, are you asking us to look at AES to
Yes.
broaden what we're proposing? Is that what I'm hearing?
As of
from-
right now, I am okay with Freetown Elementary class sizes. It would be more Assawamsett that I'm concerned about at this point.
Okay. Can we break this up into 2 issues? Can we get a motion, or get some action on the 4th grade issue first? That was the superintendent and the admin team's recommendation. So can we get a motion on the 4th grade, or get some?
I'll make a motion to permit hiring 2 4th grade teachers to have the superintendent and business manager determine where's the most appropriate part to fund them from in their view as far as the overall picture of how it's kind of a running motion, I know, but the gist is there.
Okay.
I would suggest that Mike is going to need to amend his motion because we can't leave the funding part of that question to the admin. So I think.
I'll split the motion. I'll make a motion that we permit hiring 2 4th grade teachers, and then once we vote through that,
Okay,
perhaps
like
figure
at
out the
town
funding.
meeting, we have to specify where the funding's coming from, so.
Okay. I have no thought on that right now, so.
I know that, to add to what you were just saying, Carol's just saying, I'm also not, we've talked a lot about what the town of Lakeville and Freetown towns like Freetown wanted for.
We're talking about the grade.
Oh, we're still talking about the motion?
Yep.
Okay, so funding. I think we need to, as far as funding goes, I think we need to broaden the search a little bit. If we're talking about interventionists already, we're talking about the technology staff already. There was something about grounds we talked about at one point. I think we need to take a small amount from each of these things to make a pool.
This isn't part of the motion anymore.
Correct.
Mr.
Well, I'm
McHugh
trying to
has
identify
withdrawn the
funding source.
I withdraw
from
the
his
motion.
Okay.
There we go.
So now we're back to the
Apologies.
square one.
Okay, no, just
Okay.
working through it.
No, that's
The
right.
superintendent has suggested a possible funding source that we take one of the technology integration specialists off the table. That'll give 60,000, and take the rest of the money coming from the salary line. So do we want to go with the superintendent's? Does somebody on the committee want to make a motion for
Okay, so
that?
for the point of discussion, I'll make a motion to permit hiring 2 fourth-grade teachers, taking the money from eliminating 1 technology integration specialist and the balance to come from the general salary line.
Okay, can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Discussion on the motion. Mr. Davenport.
My discussion on the motion would be, do we have to have a motion that includes the funding source in the motion? Can we defer discussion on where the funding's gonna come from?
That's what I tried to do.
I,
I'm gonna
We
turn.
would really need for you to direct, since your direct oversight is budget.
correct. I don't wanna defer it to you.
You just wanna split the
I
matter.
just- I'm looking as to whether or not we should defer, because we have several choices, and maybe some choices that we haven't discussed yet.
I think you can do that under this, now the discussion, you can discuss
Yeah.
other choices, because you have a
Okay.
motion, and now it's up for discussion, and that discussion included a funding mechanism, so this opens it up for some discussion for other areas, I think, one of which Mrs. Gomes had mentioned, and there may be some others.
Okay. So, on the motion.
I have to say, I'm still uncomfortable with this technology, the 3 technology specialists, and to hear you say that the 3 of them are gonna be floats. I mean, there should be more of a plan that's in place than just to say they're gonna float to different schools. I mean, Mr. Macomber must have some kind of a,
Yeah,
some kind of an
I certainly-
idea.
When I say floating, what I'm defining is it's my understanding that they were not advertised as at a particular building. That's what I'm saying. There certainly is a plan to how they're used, there's a job description. But when you are looking at the fact that you have, 5 buildings, and you have a campus, and then you have 2 elementary schools, it may be natural that we say one comes in based on experiences and based on their background, that we put at the K-5 level, and they work between those, and the other works at the secondary level, 6-12. That has to be really determined once we see the skill set of the people coming in.
Okay. Mr. McHugh.
For the sake of discussion, if folks did not want to take away one of the tech specialists and did not want to raid the salary line, is there a third thing that you don't really want to touch, but it's there if we had to, or?
I don't think we want to touch any of these. You people certainly were part and parcel of developing the budget and have a stronger, understanding of some of these positions than I do. I certainly can speak to the supervisor positions and know that we spoke as the administrative team, and I think collectively would tell you that those are very key positions. We're in the process of doing interviews for those. Again, like anything else, we may not get qualified people that we want for any of these positions. So ultimately, we could be at a point, but it's too early for me to tell you. And we're looking at, by the time these positions get filled for classroom teachers, we do not have anyone on the recall list. So that means we would go out and advertise, and there'd be a little bit of a lag time to get those filled. And the same thing right now with the hiring of the curriculum integration specialist and the supervisors, 612 supervisors. That's just beginning. Paper screening is taking place, interviews are being set up. So we're probably 3 weeks away from saying, wow, we've got some great candidates, or we don't. And therefore, I could say to you, well, we have a pool of money now that potentially may open up. I just am not there yet. I'm fearful of saying that.
That's a very fair answer.
So talking about that pool of money, I think we need to do, and I'm also saying, can I say that I think we need to do more with this class size issue, because we're looking at classes of 26 at the 2nd grade and 26 at the 3rd grade level.
Okay, but the motion right now is on the,
So if we're
Fourth
talking
grade.
about a pool of money, I'll stick to the pool of money. I think it would be a good idea to look at the different sources and have, we all want to grow. We all had some really great ideas. The budget has a lot of wonderful things that we all want to do, but we need to address the need for instruction to take place. And I think that if we just look at the larger plan that, yes, we approved, and we look at this, where you have to meet a need that came in unexpectedly. So we have to kind of draw down on the numbers that we've got. We want 6 of this, we want 3 of those, we want 5 of the other, And we need to really look at doing 4 of something and 2 of something and 3 of something or 4 of something. We can still do a lot of these things. I just don't think we can do 100% of everything we have in front of us. And whether or not, we can take a technology integration specialist out of the pile, but if we're also looking at these other grades, we need to make a pool that is contributed to from all the different portions that we wanted to advance. I remember something about maintenance getting a pool of money as well. Maybe we need to look at 20% of that. Everything needs to ante in to make a group, pool of money that we can meet the needs of instruction. Otherwise, why are we opening the door? We've got to get this leveled out so that we have the right number of teachers, the right ratio of students. That's what this is all about.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brown?
First of all, I don't know that we have a pool of money. You talked earlier about we had maybe $180,000 that he didn't really want to say we had extra because we have bills that we don't know if we can pay. All of a sudden, we're talking about adding teachers and we get this pool of money, and you're going to add this to the baseline budget so that next year it's already in our budget. I think you got to look at a little harder. You can't just make this decision based on a pool of money that you've taken from an integration person. Where's the money?
These are currently positions
That
that
are
were
unfilled.
part of...
I understand
Right.
that,
So
unfilled
that it would
position.
be
I understand that.
Simply saying
But you're
that...
talking about adding positions. Now he wants to add even more positions. You're adding to the baseline budget, what'll be next year's budgets, and there is no pool of money till we see where the money is going, the funding is going to come from. There is no pool of money.
I think, if I understood correctly, it would be taking and reallocating the money that you already have in your budget and the potential, and your question is a good question, because if those were important for this year, will they be important for next year? And therefore, we're going to come back and be talking about those same positions if we now slide them into something else.
Right, and going back to that, if I could, he was talking about technology, taking one from here. You've got $1 million that got spent on technology. Now you want to start cutting back on it. That doesn't make any sense to me either. I understand the class positions and the sizes, and that's concerning.
I think the committee had asked simply, I don't think any of the options are great options. I think the committee had asked me to come back, and I can't tell you to add positions without at least identifying some potential revenue. One of the reasons that I looked at the curriculum integration specialist over, let's say, the paras, is the paras, if you read the job descriptions, are directly in classrooms. So I was trying to keep, when we talk about boots on the ground, I was trying to add people into classrooms. So the paras would be working with students at risk. The curriculum integration specialists are, as I understand them, and certainly people can jump in who have a little bit more knowledge of the job description, are working with our staff to improve teaching and learning by integrating technology. So I was, it's a lesser of two evils, trying to say, okay, as you're addressing class size, I'm trying to put people into classrooms first for students, and then hopefully the next piece is certainly to improve teaching and learning by adding those. I hear you, I know how much money you spent, and it isn't an easy answer. But the committee had asked me to come back and try to identify some revenue, that's all.
Thank you. Mr. Davenport?
To me, it's starting to seem more like an E&D issue. David hits one nail on the head. There's a few nails, but one of them is that the actions we take tonight are going to have to be looked at in FY15 as a sustainability issue. But it seems to me right now it's an E&D issue. There's numerous questions about the positions that are yet to be hired, negotiations ongoing, candidate pools that are just forming. So there's so many unanswered questions on those positions. I'm not sure we even have the ability to make good decisions without all of that sorted out yet. So to me, it seems like E&D, if we eventually don't hire, then next year when we close out to E&D, that unspent money would replenish E&D. It buys us time.
Brett?
Oh, I just wanted to clarify, I was talking about taking positions off the table to restore teaching, not having everything at once.
Okay.
That's all.
Mr. McHugh?
Same line of thinking. I was going to ask if we know approximately how much is in the E&D account right now.
Yeah, let me give you a timing issue, and then I'll answer that.
Sure.
Essentially, at your next meeting, I'm going to come in with the final numbers on closing the books. After that time, we have the auditors come in and they essentially certify that our numbers are correct. and then it goes to the Bureau of Accounts at the state. So the state has to then certify that the E&D number that is correct. So it's sort of a limbo period in the sense that, you know, while we certainly know there will be E&D, and we certainly know that, but it's not certified, so you can't take it right now.
Sure.
We ended last year with, I think, 708. Now, I'm talking about the year the E&D number you voted last, I guess, October probably, was about 787,000, far below the 5% that you're allowed to have, actually, you know, substantially below it. But that's how much was in the account. That will go up slightly.
Okay. I'm going to, go ahead.
I was going to suggest, I was going to amend the motion to change the source of funding to E&D, again, for discussion.
Just, only that you heard, we have a timing issue.
Right.
Yeah,
So that
we
you
can't
know that
touch
would
E&D
be-
right now till it's
till
certified.
it's certified, and that would be.
But we can't spend that money.
So you're looking at what, the end of October?
Probably looking at, it didn't get certified last year till January 1st. January, yeah, sometime in January, early January. So I mean, again, you had 787 last year.
Right.
It's not going to go down, but, I mean, the timing is you can't certify it till the state, you can't vote it till the state certifies it.
That's true. I was thinking he could spend it.
Go ahead, Mr. Davenport.
Then I would suggest voting it out of the salary line, and then we can let the timing issue pass, and then we can make a decision on E&D at that time when it's available to us.
All right, do you want to amend your motion?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
It's exactly what Dave just said.
All right.
Coming out of the salary line.
Okay, can I get a second on the amendment? Well, we need a second because the original motion was second with it splitting.
Right. I didn't hear you. All right, you know, I'll withdraw the whole thing totally. I'll move to permit the hiring of 2 fourth-grade teachers, the funding to come from the salary line, with the understanding that the salary line will be replenished if needed once E&D is certified.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor, oh, go ahead, Mr. Clark.
So I have just a question for you, Fred. So let's say the same thing happened, and you didn't get that certification until January.
Yes.
Suppose you lost a boiler in November.
Well, I think we'd be faced with the same problem if we lost a boiler tomorrow. I mean, we'd essentially have to ask you to, you know, vote the expenditure and then come back from E&D, because there's no way we could cover it any other way. I mean, I mean, the purpose of the E&D obviously is, you know, for the kind of situation you describe. It just happens that the state rules put you in sort of a position where you, between the time your books close and the time it gets audited and the time it gets certified, you know, the account really isn't available for you to draw from immediately. But, you know, I can tell you with certainty it's not going down, so, you know.
I'm going to call the question at this point, if that's all right. Oh, no, go ahead, Carol.
No, I'd like to see us suggest option number 2. We heard that the technology integration specialist there's a plan for them. I'm sure there's a plan. But I think we could get by with 2 if we have 2 qualified candidates and free up $60,000 while we continue to form the plan and implement it. And just my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you. All right, and Mr. Davenport?
I think the motion as stands would even support that ability later on. We don't really know Craig's plan because we haven't really discussed it but again, if your candidate pool or other factors came along and we only hired 2, that decision's still available to us.
You had a district technology plan. That plan needs to be rewritten and expired, and plus most of the administrators have left. So that's a step in the process, the administrative team. And Craig and I will be meeting. I think it's going to be our first our next meeting or the first meeting in October to develop that plan. However, the job descriptions were part of your FY14 budget, so I am assuming that the plan was put out there as to what they and how they were going to be used then. I just wasn't here, obviously, to hear that, so I'm certainly sure there's a plan for them to work with staff to help integrate. The caution is, as you well know, that the money that funded where we are now has not funded the technology hardware and software improvements. It was infrastructure to then get us to the next step. So to some degree, you're working with your hands tied by the fact that your capacity level will be different when you put Part B of that technology initiative in place, which I'm assuming will happen from us or from whoever sits in this chair after I leave.
Thank you.
Just to clarify what I was saying, if we cut the position, we cut the position. If we take it out of salary, we can still not fill the position at a later date. I'm just saying that the option as is more flexible than cutting positions tonight.
Agreed. Okay, at this point, I'm gonna close discussion, and I'm gonna call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion to hire 2 fourth-grade teachers with the money coming out of the salary line to be later replenished if needed by E&D, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. You're welcome. Now go get us 2 teachers. I want it to start tomorrow.
We'll post it on School Spring tomorrow. We'll post it tomorrow
Okay.
on School Spring. Thank you.
All right, now on to the AES issue. And at this point, I would like to ask Paul LaBelle to give us his thoughts, if that's okay with the superintendent, his thoughts and his comments on it. And then we will take it from there.
Thoughts and comments?
On the class size issue at AES, on what do you need, what don't you need, what would you like?
That's a loaded question. I mean, until this, let's speak carefully here, because before the situation came, the extra school committee meeting, I was charting the course with the teachers that I had and the students that were entering my building. Coming from different school districts where I taught and where I was an administrator, class sizes varied. I saw class sizes that were higher than what I'm seeing here, being very successful. I even taught myself as a fourth grade teacher with class sizes that were higher than this. So it was a concern, because I know the outgoing principal was concerned, was keeping class lists more concerned with first grade, actually. And my philosophy in early childhood education is always looking at first grade, having lowest numbers possible there, because that's where you're building your foundational skills. Gaps that are created in first grade are harder to fill as they go on. That doesn't say that there's not an effect of higher class sizes in 2, 3, and 4. So as I said, prior to this becoming a topic of discussion, I think the teachers in my building will open the door, and the number of children that walk into their doors, the number of children that they're going to be teaching. Would I love to have an extra teacher or 2 in my building? Absolutely. I'm very jealous of what's going to happen at Grace. I'm a little bit at a loss for words, because I would love to advocate, for extra instructional teachers at my building. I know there was the discussion of paras in supporting the classroom, but really what the most influence that we're going to have on instruction is by having an actual teacher. Though paras do play a very important and vital role within our school, and I know that my particular building is learning to function without the ones that did not return this year. So even though we don't rely on paraprofessionals to give direct instruction, we do rely on the help that they give within the classroom. But I don't think actually putting paras or extra paras into our building is truly going to create what we were looking for. And I know on the outside it looks that way. And once again, if someone was to give me paraprofessionals, would I deny them coming in and working with our children? Absolutely not. Looking at what the charge was given to Dr. Nash to come back with as a proposal, I think she was looking globally. She wasn't just looking at one grade. She wasn't looking just at one school. She was looking at the district as a whole. And I think we all support her in the decision to do what you voted on this evening. The question gets a little muddied when we look at the enrollment figures between FES and AES. If we didn't have those to compare, we might not be having this discussion. I'm looking at the numbers that I had in Acushnet. You know, some of those were up there as well. But I think we're looking at two schools in the same district, and I think it's a little difficult to say that there can be equity between those two buildings. They're two different buildings, and they're still serving two towns. And I'm not, if someone has a solution how that could be worked out between the two, I don't see one. I'm very confident in the staff that I have. I'm disappointed that I can't bring them back another teacher to our building, but I'm not afraid to forge ahead with what we have in place. I am concerned with some of the other things that came up with you know, the coverage issues that we have, because that truly has an effect on instruction, because I'm using people who need to be working with children, and I have them at recess duty. You know, that's a concern of mine. I have personnel who are just signing up and helping out wherever needed, when in actual fact they need to be working on collecting data, creating those small learning groups. That's kind of the unseen, what's going on here. We will do what we're supposed to do. We will go into our classrooms each morning, and as I said, we will teach the children that show up. So that's my response.
Thank you. Okay, now I'll open it up for discussion from the committee.
Well, it's hard for me to speak again. Is that okay? That was that.
I was recognizing
I'm certainly
you.
not going to you know, contradict anyone on the number if people are comfortable, and we've got great staff. I know that. It just seems that obviously looking at the numbers, when we see a lot of 26s in here, that it's a little difficult to metabolize when we've talked to the people in both towns about what we were going to bring forward under Tier 1 and Tier 2. So when we see 26, and I know the people at home are going to see 26, and they're going to have questions, and we were just talking moments ago about how the real difference in class size is between 20, not going from 27 to 26 or 26 to 25, but going down to 20 and 22. And that's exactly what we would be doing if we added one instructor at grade 2 and grade 3. That is my concern.
Okay.
I have to say, I completely agree with Brett. I was all for adding staff to try to get the class sizes down, and you're telling me, if I'm hearing correctly, that you don't think that it's necessary in order to help your staff. And I'd like to go on record as saying that, because I've heard from community members, I've heard from parents, I've heard from various people that have complained about the class sizes, that have complained, or that I've heard that full regionalization was intended to avoid this. It was intended to keep lower class sizes, and I kind of feel like you're tying our hands. Like if you, as our administrator in that elementary school, I'm looking to you for guidance, as well as I'm looking to Dr. Nash. And if you're telling me it's okay, then I'm okay with that. You're the expert. I'm an advocate for the children. I was elected by the community. So I'm good.
Just a couple of things. I certainly don't think that, and I'm not going to put words in Paul's mouth that he's saying that. I think we were prioritizing. I mean, I could have come back to you easily with $300,000. There's no question. But I needed to be sensible, and I needed to look at where the highest need, I think I was saying, was. But, Paul and I had that discussion with the 25s and the 24s and that as to what, and it was really a juggling act. So it went back to, as I mentioned, the rationale. We have 8 classes of 27, more than any number of classes overall in the grade that are high. And it was really making a discussion around that. And it was also being very cognizant of where was the money going to come from. I don't think that the committee wants to continue to deplete E&D. I certainly think that, looking at it and hopeful that we will have money left in salary and we won't be coming back to you would be my hope for the 2 positions that potentially are 100 to 110,000. But now we're talking, 200,000. We're just adding on, and that was simply a decision that I made, really not Paul, not to bring forward $200,000 or $300,000, which we could have certainly to address that, to bring those down to comparable numbers to FES.
Dr. Nash, what would it take to solve AES's coverage problems? What would we need for personnel, or so that way the people that we're paying to do certain jobs?
Well, we'll have to answer that regardless. If the paras, once the para-interventionists get bargained, then that goes away. And those positions, as long as they remain, those have duties and some responsibilities, which would include the coverage, so that issue goes away. We don't have the issue currently at FES, it's my understanding, it's just at AES.
Okay, would it make sense to bring substitutes in?
Sure, we can do that. We've been kind of, Paul's been handling that, and staff, we had that conversation. Staff have, as he indicated, stepped up to the plate, but there will be a real need to ask staff to do what they've been trained to do. And yes, we would absolutely have to do that, bring in a sub to go in. The difficulty is oftentimes it's midday, those kinds of things. It's not a full day. So you're in essence you could be paying someone to do more than actually you need them, but I'm sure we can try to work that out.
Okay.
If I might just add one thing, because we talk about, and you're going to see that I've gone a little bit beyond what probably I should have by suggesting to you that you consider, because I know that will be a constant discussion, looking at establishing some guidelines for class sizes. Not a policy, but many districts have policies, as I've been researching them, but most have guidelines. So that as school committees, members, yourselves, and others who come after you, and people who sit in this chair, and our administrators begin to talk about budget, and we talk about staffing, we have some guidelines for class sizes so that we can say to you, clearly, this does exceed a guideline. We had some discussion, very quickly, I will say, albeit at our meeting. We've given you something to consider, to chew on, to really think about, but I'd like to strongly suggest to this committee that we do come back at a future date to discuss the potential of establishing guidelines for class sizes. Having said that, I'll point you to the one piece of research that's the oldest and the most credible, and that's the research that was done in Tennessee about class size. It's called the STAR study. It's the only longitudinal, large-based study that was ever done on the impact of class size in the United States. And you're not going to want to hear this, but I'm going to tell you, the class size that significantly had long-range impact on students, and this was a widely based demographic area, so it was students who had extreme disabilities as well as students of different racial backgrounds, was a class size of 13 to 17. Other than that, the study showed thousands of students that there wasn't much of an impact. Now, having said that, is anyone going to sit here and say that 20 class size is not better than 27? Absolutely not. We know that there's an impact, but we're talking about the biggest gains. There were always gains with smaller class sizes. We're talking about the biggest gains. So there's been a lot of discussion, and I can point to you a lot of policies and guidelines at committees, and they're all over the place in Massachusetts on recommendations for class size. We're in the ballpark, and I'd ask you to kind of look at this, and maybe we could put this on if the committee so chooses for a future discussion. So at least we have some guidelines that we can point to when we're building our budget and looking at staffing. So that would be something that I would ask the committee to consider, and you have that as a memorandum from me.
Just kind of piggybacking on what Carolyn had said about with the full regionalization, and obviously too late to do this year, but in next year or the year after, is there any possibility of lowering the class sizes at Assawamsett by taking some Lakeville students who may live near the town line and having them attend Freetown Elementary instead. Because that, for whatever reason, we've stuck with dividing at that level without... Would that work, or would it not work, or is it too early to tell, or?
You can always consider redistricting. Is there wisdom in that? I think you're going to get a lot of people on different sides of that, both from very emotional, personal reasons about the neighborhood school, about the need for kids to be together for a period of time. I mean, there are all kinds of reasons. And then, of course, there's a very large issue around transportation and what would what would the cost be? And so that would be a very legitimate beginning point. But actually, you certainly can look at that. You have an ability to redistrict your schools as part of what a school committee does.
That was part of the first discussions way back about regionalization, was that we could do some of those things, and it would actually lower the cost of transportation, because we're busing kids from one end of town that are right near the school, all the way across town. But the issues were with parents wanting their kids to be with the Lakeville kids, and so but that was the beginning, that was way back.
Way back.
And
I remember
we
that.
thought that it would
Right.
lower transportation costs.
Right.
And it would have.
And the same thing with
It would
Freetown.
have.
You got Freetown kids that live right up close over there as well.
Right.
That could be going over there. So you could mix that, but that's a big discussion.
You're absolutely
That has
right.
real personal
Yep.
meaning to a lot of people.
It's one of those.
The good old days.
You're absolutely right.
Four nights
And
a week.
remember that you've got a huge swing, actually, when you take out your integrated preschool. That's a large number. So when you really look at it, it's disproportionate, the number of students in AES and FES. So you'd be looking at a pretty substantial movement of students to get any kind of real balance. And then we're looking at, staffing and all of that. I mean, yes, the answer is of course, you can discuss that. And the question is, if the school committee would like the superintendent to do the research and come back, you probably want to form a committee, a subcommittee. It would include all the stakeholders. I think Mr. Brown is exactly right. Parents are going to be intimately involved in this, but it is something you can discuss.
Mr. Davenport.
Well, I think Mike's right that it's something to be talked about. As far as balance, I mean, there's two ways to look at it for balance. Do we try to use the schools equally or proportionate to their size? Or are we just trying to balance off class sizes within the two communities? Because if it's just class sizes, we're only looking at moving about 3% of our aggregate, combined enrollment between the two schools. And I would think that there could be an opportunity to find that 3% without a lot of bedlam in the community. I could be entirely wrong about that, but it's something to further discuss. And, I'd like to just throw out there that we did do some good last year. The communities and the administration and the committee, and the class sizes that we're looking at today are not all that out of line with what we were projecting in Tier 2. The exception being grade 4, and we just made a move to take some corrective action there. Lakeville passed an override. It didn't fully fund the budget, but it came close. Freetown kept stride with that and didn't make an issue of it. So, both communities, the voters, the school committee, I mean, we got a lot done. These class size issues, I mean, really, the committee, the community and everything, we should have been talking about this in the winter when all of this budget was being developed, because right now, to even off through hiring, we've got to hire another teacher at Assawamsett at each grade level, and then we have to figure out how to fund it next year. So we really have to build in a completely different way to be sustainable, and we have to figure out where the money's going to come from, and we should have factored that into, what we were going to do for an override, and if that's what we wanted to do, we should have done it this past year. Because I don't think we're going to go for another override next year to say, like a makeup override, just to patch in here that we made a little bit of a boo-boo. I mean, we largely delivered what we said we were going to do over 6 months of discussion.
Thank you. I did ask already to have put on the agenda for the September 25th meeting to talk about sustainability and looking at our current school models, and do we stay with the current model that we have? Do we go to a K-5 model? I think we need to have that discussion as part of a sustainability, looking at enrollment. Now, I know that this summer was a little different because we did get a lot of move-ins and a lot of enrollment, but I think overall we still need to have that discussion and look at what's the best use of our current facilities, you know, and do we bus kids, you know, to Lakeville or to Freetown, depending upon where they live. So yes, I'm in agreement of that. Carolyn?
I was just going to say, if we're talking about redistricting at all, I think you would recall when we were looking at full regionalization, we found the best model would have been 3 K through 6 schools, depending on where the children lived, and it would also eliminate a tier of the busing.
Yeah.
It was, originally that was the plan, and it had changed after that, but it's another whole can of worms.
No, we're going to open up that can on the 25th.
And a lot of
because the
work,
towns?
but that's, if you remember, that was what the original suggestion was.
And I can remember the discussion was, you know, the sooner the kids are going to be integrating anyways, the sooner the better, was the thoughts behind some of that. And
Exactly.
the savings of the
savings of the buses were huge too.
But it's a very tricky, sticky issue.
Yes.
I think the biggest
I'm
issue,
right with you.
when you redistrict for any reasons, it is really about social, emotional. It really is the sense of neighborhood school, being able to attend the school that is either in your town or in your neighborhood. And redistricting has always been historically a hot potato for any school committee to deal with, other than because of racial imbalance or some of the issues of huge class sizes where you try to address them, or one of the superintendents today, Manchester Essex, asked about some different models because they're looking at changing their school models and which model is more effective for students. We know that fewer transitions probably make some sense, but then that creates the other issue, and you have to balance that and then step back and say what's best for kids. You know, we know that, you know, adults eventually do get over all of that, and kids do make some great transitions, and they're very flexible. So what makes sense for kids, and then, you know, what's the cost savings, and what are the pluses we have, and what are the negatives in doing that. So.
Any more discussion on this?
I just wanted to give a little clarification. I'm sorry, I was caught a little off guard with the question, and I was sitting back there reflecting on some of the things I said. I don't want to give the impression that I'm not supporting or saying that class size isn't important. It is extremely important. The one constant that I did have from the beginning when I started work in July was that I knew that there were going to be 3 para-interventionists coming to my school, and that's what I've been banking on. I have a seasoned staff of second graders, second grade teachers. However, I also know that with having those 3 interventionists come in, I'm going to be able to utilize them in a fashion where they'll be able to reach across the neediest of children through all of the grade levels. So I didn't want to say I don't want paras and I don't want teachers. I'm just saying in the constant of what I was dealing with and the course that was already charted, we had a plan for using them. I would love to just have them now, that's all.
If I could just counter that with, I was looking at helping you sooner than later. Our next negotiation session isn't until September 18th. It could be the last meeting. It could be the beginning of several meetings. That's hard to tell. So I was just trying to get you the help sooner than later, because each day, obviously, in a child's education is one that they'll never get back.
Absolutely.
So that's where I was going with that. But I also have something that I can take back to community members, and to say that we tried. Like,
Right.
I wanted to give you that help, but.
I appreciate that.
And I'm not thinking negatively about the interventionists. I hope that we can bargain them, and I hope we can get some qualified applicants, but the time is ticking. So.
I just wanted to bring that clarity to what I was saying.
Thank
so.
you.
Thank you.
Not to overcomplicate the issue, but we're going to be potentially talking about student assignment in classes, this, that, and the other. Are we still giving any thought to bringing high school students from Acushnet to Apponequet? And would that need to be part of that discussion?
We haven't even talked about that yet, but we can certainly put that all on the discussion on the 25th, 26th rather. Anybody else on this issue? Once, twice. Okay, moving on. I believe next on it we have Dr. Natalie Dunning.
I managed to put aside my letter, so I'm sorry. At the beginning of the meeting, I did provide a handout to the members of the school committee on a report for what's been going on in the Office of Student and Professional Learning. So this has been a very busy beginning of the school year. As you can imagine, I started about mid-July with a new administrative team, and we are trying to make sure that the things that we are paying most attention to in the Office of Student and Professional Learning are aligned with the strategic goals that are found in the district strategic plan. So just to update you on some of the major things that have occurred in the last month and a half, we have been working very hard on the educator evaluation system. As you know, Massachusetts as a race to the top district and Freetown-Lakeville as a race to the top district itself accepted money, and as part of that, we are working on the new Massachusetts Educator Evaluation Plan. We've been working very closely with members of EAFL to ensure that the negotiated language and the negotiated timelines are something that we can complete both from the educator point of view and from the administrator point of view. We have reworked the educator evaluation handbook, and per negotiated language, we have also started to do overviews of that language and the timeline with all of the teachers. We are looking at the educator evaluation system as an educator development system. And how can we work really in concert with each other, the evaluators and the evaluatees, to improve teacher practice as a means to improving student performance versus let's look for bad stuff so we can get you in your classroom. So I just wanted to let you know that it's been a very collaborative effort so far. We did meet on Monday of this week with the district labor management team to discuss district-determined measures, which will be part of the educator evaluation system as we move forward to see how teacher practice is influencing student performance, and that was a very productive discussion, and we will continue moving forward with that. I hope to have all of the educator handbook online on the district website. I don't know when, because I don't know how to put it up yet, but soon. Everybody does have the hard copies that they need access to on the educator and the evaluator side. The second thing that we have been looking at is really developing our district literacy team. So along with a new elementary administrative team, we do have some new folks in the role of literacy coach and reading specialist. We're working on making sure that we have consistency across the district and looking at the kinds of work the reading specialist and the literacy coaches are doing. We are lucky in that for as much as you are easily disappointed when a school district falls into that level 3 category, we have the opportunity to have some additional support based on last year when Freetown had that move to level 3, and we have a commitment from the district, I don't know the name of it, DSAC, as part of the Department of Ed to give us some additional support in our district, and we have committed to working with Mary Ellen Caesar to create a district literacy plan, which we're moving forward with, which is very exciting to have that opportunity. In terms of induction and mentoring, you did hear, or you have in front of you, a list of all of the new staff members that we have. And we continue to work on an induction and mentoring program. We have 16 folks who have mentors in our district. A large number of those are at the high school, and we will be having continued meetings, monthly meetings throughout the school year. We had a great start with a 2-day workshop for our new teachers and beginning to integrate them into the culture of the Freetown-Lakeville Public Schools, and also in terms of getting them some initial understanding of what the educator evaluation system is, especially for teachers on developing plans, because all teachers new to the district automatically go on a developing plan, which gives them a lot of access with their evaluators to look at those aspects of teaching and learning that need some improvement in their classroom. So that has taken a huge amount of time and attention at the beginning of the school year. And then the last piece that you'll find in your report, and it is the bulk of the report that I gave to you, you have been hearing about PARC, which is the Partnership for the Assessment of Readiness for College and Career. The PARC assessment is the assessment that is slated to replace the MCAS, which will measure student growth in ELA, math, and science. I'm sorry, that's what we test currently for MCAS. The PARC will look at replacing the ELA and math portions of those tests. It is a different type of testing than the MCAS in that it happens more than once during the year, and they are much more performance-based than even the current tests are. And Massachusetts ranks fairly high in terms of our standards and the tests that we're taking, but because we're part of the PARC consortium based on the Race to the Top, this year, they are going to start to pilot some of those PARC assessments, and we were informed that about 10% of schools in the state of Massachusetts would be selected to be involved in this pilot test. If you turn to the back page, you will see that both Grace and Apponequet High School were selected to be part of that pilot, and that we will be piloting math test in 3 grades and the ELA test in one of those grades, and we will be looking at both the performance-based assessments and the end-of-year assessments. So it's a very exciting opportunity for us. It's pretty funny that in a state where about 10% of schools will be selected, 40% of the schools in our town are selected, but what that's going to do for us is to help us really prepare for when the test does count in the following year. So there's some information about those tests and what we can be expecting for our teachers and students in the spring of this year.
Thank you. Anybody from the committee have any questions? Great job. Thank you.
My only comment would be that you noted that it says the PARC assessment is online. So the first component of that, before I could respond, yes, we would be able to participate, was whether or not we met the technical capacity. And so we do, and that's thankful because we have the money that was spent in the infrastructure. So our students certainly, and we have access in the sense that we have to be able to provide access for 25 to 30 students, depending on the class, to be able to access at once during a certain time the online, because there's an online and there's still a paper and pencil of PARC. So we were selected for all online. We could have opted out if we didn't have the technical capacity. I point this out because down the road, in 2 or 3 years, when PARC officially gets put in the districts, this becomes, as many of us have said to the commissioner, unfunded mandate. It's unfunded because you as a district must be able to provide the hardware, which currently we probably would not have, to meet the technical capacity for students. So that's a discussion that's ongoing as to what would meet that capacity, a Chromebook or something else. Districts have run out to try to purchase or buy the lease in anticipation, but I bring that up because I think there's some misnomer, or at least I've been told, misunderstanding in the district, that the $900,000+ might have brought us to that level, when it's my understanding in talking with the Director of Technology that it really only upgraded your infrastructure. So you will probably see as part of our capital project, we have to prepare for this. In 2015-16, it's going to be here. So in the next 2 years, we need to look at our hardware capacity and make some determinations based on what we'll get back from these sessions as to what needs to happen. I know, we've all been shaking our heads about that. But the state of Massachusetts, in order to get its money, bought into this. And, so, it's a double-edged sword. School districts got more money of the $260 million that the state gave you through Chapter 70, but here is the other piece of it. Common Core, park assessments, that's the other piece. So, it is something that I need to bring to your attention, because you're probably going to hear us come back as part of the FY15 budget, talking about that over the next few years.
Just for a follow-up on that.
Sure.
That's why I was saying, you're taking money from the technology integration specialist, and now you're telling us in 2 years we're gonna be needing all this money this is what I'm talking about.
Yeah, exactly. We're gonna need it for the.
You gotta be careful where you're taking the money from, which you budgeted for one thing, people are expecting you to use it, and now we're gonna be behind the 8 ball, because now,
We're going
it's
to
a,
need
it's a
the
snowball effect. I understand
We're going to need the
that.
hardware, but we're also going to need, certainly, obviously, staff who help with making sure that it's integrated and that people are able to use it. But, it's an ongoing concern that I think every school district has had, particularly smaller districts who have not been able to upgrade both their technology through the infrastructure, but also particularly stay on some kind of a plan for hardware upgrades over the last few years. And you remember that we have aging technology here, as I've talked with Craig, that our newest computers have run out of warranty. So there has not been a capital plan, because you can't put the cart before the horse. We couldn't do that. But now I just want to make sure that people recognize that it's my understanding that we need to move. We can't just let it sit there, because it can't do anything if we don't have what we need to make it do what it's intended to do. So that will be something that will, I'm certainly sure, come up. So.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just because it's being mentioned, one thing that I'm sure the committee's going to be interested to hear down the line is what kind of capital commitment we're going to be asked to support for technology hardware, because one of the big selling points of the infrastructure upgrade was bring your own device for one, but also that a lot of this aging hardware with this new infrastructure could be repurposed or given a second life, so to speak, because those machines aren't doing the work anymore, it's the network, so they're more like a dumb terminal.
Yeah. I think part of that discussion, you're exactly right, was with the change to the new infrastructure, the cost savings is in what you can purchase. It's a lot cheaper. You can purchase a thin client type of thing for $300 or $400 as opposed to spending, say, $800. So there's, in my discussion with Craig, and I'm certainly not the expert, I think it gives us now a different leverage in the amount of money. We can get double maybe what we would have been able to get before because of the infrastructure. But you're exactly right. And part of it will have to be determined by what will be the needs in whole groups. The concerns that districts have is not just bring your own device, because that may not be something that while it can be used in the classroom and teachers can use it, what is it that the state is going to require us to have to use? And then, where do we house it? Do we do with carts? Do we do cows? Do we do full classrooms? Because we actually do have some space issues, by the way, in full classrooms. So you're going to probably see a very staggered long period, my hunch is, of assessment window, because as you heard Dr. Dunning say, it's going to be multiple times a year, because they know that school districts can't have access for 1,000 students to computers all at once. That just isn't going to happen in most districts anyway. So the answer is really, we need to think about it, we need to start planning, we need to actively make sure that we have something in place by 2015-16, at least that's what we're told.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anybody remember how much money, I'm sorry, okay. Does anybody remember how much money we got for Race to the Top?
Probably not a lot.
Probably about 30 grand, I
Yep.
think.
Mm-hmm.
That's some of the most expensive money we've ever gotten.
Right. The state of Massachusetts got $260 million. It came back to you in other ways. It came back to you through Chapter 70. So you got it differently. But if you were a Race to the Top district, the commitment as far as was usually minimal. Could be dependent on the size of your district. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is Mr. Fred Baker.
I have two issues to go over. One is that we will be sending out, prior to the next meeting, the information on the closing for last year. The earlier predictions that we made in July are going to come pretty close in terms of, the money that would be transferred to circuit breaker, the money that we upfronted on the copiers, and so I'll send that out, try to get it out to you fairly early. If you have any questions, please call me, because it's, that what you actually have to vote is a bit confusing, but it's the state's format. The second thing is that on the numbers that I gave you at the last meeting relative to the present budget, while the 150 number on the staffing is holding, and while the 120 negative number on the contracted services for special ed is holding, I had told you at the time that I thought we'd be 120,000 short on substitute teachers. I have since learned a lot more about the model we're going to use this year for professional development, as opposed to what was used last year, where teachers in large numbers were pulled out of the classrooms. So that 120,000 figure is exaggerated by about five-fold. So while I think we're going to be a little bit short in the substitute teacher account, it will be nowhere near the number I gave you, but I did not fully understand the model we're going to use this year. So we're a little better off than we were.
We had pulled teachers out of classroom last year. When we saw that the sublines across the district were underfunded, Fred and I did a, wow, we spent way over that. And then when we had our meeting, in our management labor meeting for talking about DDMs, we realized why. That it was really because 13, 14 teachers were pulled out of classrooms continually for professional development, and that's why it bumped, because it has to be charged back to the subline, because it was a substitute that was needed, and that's why that line was so troubling, and we're hopeful that it won't be, because the model this year is not going to be to pull teachers out of the classroom. So that makes us feel a little better. And was it still 180 for salary, or is it down to 150?
No, still looking at 180 for
Okay.
salary,
You had said
obviously being
150.
offset
Okay,
by
yeah.
the contracted services and special ed to some
Thank you.
degree. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Now, before we get to meeting recap, community comments, welcome. I have another piece of other business, and this is to do with the meeting on the 25th. Mr. Kuchar cannot make it till 9 o'clock at night on the 25th. I personally, and I'm going to leave this up to the feeling of the committee, I personally think that Mr. Kuchar coming at 9 o'clock at night on the 25th, on the 26th, no good can come from that, because it's already too late in the evening, and it's not fair to the public that may want to come and hear what Mr. Kuchar has to say as we start to talk about the superintendent search. So does the committee want to have him here that night at 9 o'clock? You don't even have
I
to
don't
raise
even
your
think
hand.
it's fair to Mr. Cooch.
He is coming from another district in Weston, Mass. He said he could make it. He finishes up at 7:30, Amy?
7:30 in Monson.
In Munson.
Munson.
Yeah, so it would be quite a ride for him.
It's quite a gesture on his part.
Yeah, but no, okay. So with that in mind, Amy,
He did supply some alternate dates. What he gave us was, today's the 11th, he could come down tomorrow. The 14th, the 17th, 19th, 30th, or October 1st.
Can you repeat that one more
Yep,
time?
absolutely. So it was September 12, 14, 17, 19, 30, or 10/1 were nights that he was available. He did say there were some morning or midday if we wanted to start with a smaller group as opposed to the full committee.
how about we do this, if it's all right with the committee? We'll have Amy send out those dates, and everybody say which ones they can attend, and whatever we get the biggest consensus, we'll go with that.
Is any of those dates on a meeting night?
No,
No, I already checked that.
No, we checked.
we already checked that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are any of those Wednesdays? Potentially maybe could look at. They were all over the place. Yeah.
No, they're all over the place.
Thursdays, there's a Saturday in there.
There's a Monday, there's a Tuesday.
Okay.
I've had to do that before, it's not fun.
No, that's not, no,
Done
I'm
Saturday
sorry.
budget workshops.
That's
Yeah.
only if need be.
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
There were no Sundays in that.
Okay,
list, though.
all right.
On camera.
Okay. Mrs. Maserati will forward them out to us, and then we'll come up with a general consensus. Also, I will send you guys, or actually, I would encourage you guys to, I'm going to try to make some of the open houses and see all the great things going on at the school. So I'd encourage all the new committee members and us veteran members too to attend and see the great stuff. Okay. Does anybody from the committee have anything else before I turn it over to the public? Because Mr. Powderly's got a speech ready.
I'll let anyone else go first.
All right, go ahead. Meeting recap on agenda topics.
I do not think
I saw your handwriting.
the, I got certainly torn a bit between Paul LaBelle's class size and certainly Dr. Nash's studies, which I think we all have a feeling of what should the class size be. And it's something that we've inferred to our taxpayers as to what we inferred that the class size might be at Assawamsett Elementary School. But having said that, I think by setting guidelines, I'd rather policy, but guidelines are fine. I think what you'll find is that I would infer that you would have, it's more favorable to have smaller class sizes in lower grades. Possibly. But I believe if you do it school-wise, our enrollment, I don't think has changed dramatically overall. And we have these peaks in lower classes. Then the older students end up going to Old Colony, Bristol Aggie, but Old Colony is a good choice where a lot of kids do go. But I think if you did it by class size, but also by subject, I think you'd be pleasantly surprised that the funding for the lower grades teacher support may come from larger class sizes in the high school. And I think if you go through that exercise, I think we would be pleasantly surprised. That's why I did not like to see us pick just the K through 5 without looking at all of the entire class sizes, but by subject. Because once again, I support smaller class sizes. To recap is, Algebra 1, I might support a 15 class size with 15 peer tutors. But if I'm teaching history in the upper grades, I'd like to see it done in the auditorium, and perhaps it is. So I'm somewhat adamant of the guidelines because I think the funding for the lower grades will come from the higher grades. You can't do that this year, but we've talked about setting guidelines in the past. We don't do it, and we go after the peak problems by grade. Last year we hired 4+ teachers, without a school enrollment increase. I believe this year we're hiring 2 or more, but 2 without an enrollment increase. By grade, the lower grades went up, but I don't know that the overall number of approximately 3,000 has changed. I haven't had access to that number because, as strange as it is, we have to do a public request to get those numbers. So I support, once again, writing a guideline. I think you'll find the funds coming from the upper grades. And I don't necessarily disagree with Dr. Nash on class size, or perhaps Paul LaBelle saying I'm going to rough it through because I've already set my teachers and agendas. The Assawamsett versus Freetown, and it's not going to be versus, it's just what you will hear is that if you have 122 students in 5 sections at Assawamsett and you have 104 in 5 sections at Freetown, there seems to be a bit of inequity. We talk about possibly busing students to Freetown if in fact they're close to that end of the town. You can go through the advantages and disadvantages of doing that. But instead of busing 30 to 40 students to a different school district, I don't know why we just wouldn't change move 2 teachers from the school system. Certainly seems easier than going through the bus route. There must be some reason why we want to move students. I'd rather just move a couple of teachers. Not for this period of time. This is for, I believe, next year. In my mind, it's next year. This year is pretty much done for. Any increase, if we have an enrollment that stays at 3,000, any increase, whether it be the 4 teachers from last year, the 2 teachers for this year, if you add any administrators, the math and the sustainability do not work. Because if you're doing a 2.5%, and you're doing that through contractual obligations that you've written, any higher, if the enrollment doesn't change, and I don't think the enrollment changed, I think it stayed at approximately 3,000. So I would support smaller class sizes in the lower grades only if it came from the higher grades. In my opinion, I think there'd be money there. I'm not so sure what the class sizes should be. I think there's some numbers, we've quoted numbers to the taxpayers, but I'm not so sure that that wasn't just a gut feel or what we felt that number should be. So once again, I plead with you folks to work in a guideline. I think you'll come up with the money. It isn't the guideline of the class size absolutely, but it's by subject. I think you'll come up with the money. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Powderly. Anyone else? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. We don't have an executive session for tonight?
So moved.
Second, third.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, good night, everyone. Thank you for attending.
Thank you for that.